Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, Lebanon was already facing economic collapse and multiple humanitarian pressures. Does the country actually have the capacity to absorb 500,000 displaced people today?
As we know, Lebanon has been through many conflicts and many phases of this current conflict. So what we are seeing on the ground, definitely the response capacity is overstretched. The United Nations, with all its agencies, including the International Organization for Migration, is trying to respond to the best of our capacities, but also the resources are limited. The same for the government, who is taking the lead in the response. And definitely the communities themselves are the most important actor in this response. They are hosting the people in their houses. They are hosting them also in apartments that they own. So far, as you can see, the number hosted in the shelters can add to 1/5 of the total number of displacement, but we don't know for how long this will continue. You know, if you live outside the shelter, you need to pay rent, you need to cover your own costs.
Indeed.
And this is sustainable.
Indeed. Behind these numbers, of course, are families, right, forced from their homes with very little warning. Well, what are they telling you? What are they telling the IOM about what they left behind, what their most urgent needs are right now?
Many of the families or the displaced families left only with their clothes. They left everything at home. They ran out for their lives. And definitely there is a fear and a high level of uncertainty. We know that also the options for those who fled their homes are very limited. So again, the limited number of shelters and the limited support being offered. Just to mention, also yesterday we visited a center that hosts, it was also remarkable to see how the needs are being addressed. So I would really like to stress the important role the civil society is playing here and the leadership of the government for this response.
And interesting that communities are coming together to help. We have also seen, Othman, that a number of people have crossed the border into Syria, Syrian refugees also. Is there a risk that the crisis could trigger new cross-border movements into neighboring countries?
No, definitely in any crisis, cross-border is an option. But as we see now also, it is not as easy as it was two years ago or last year. There has been restrictions on the movement across the border. For Syrians, I think we are seeing a number of returnees. Maybe the majority still did not decide to leave Lebanon, but for Lebanese, the option is not open for everyone.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us about this, and thank you for the work you're doing on the ground there in Lebanon. Othman Belbasi, Regional Director for the Middle East and North Africa for the International Organization of Migration.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming. This is March 11th. A lot is happening in the energy markets. Last night, Japan announced that they were going to release oil reserves. The reason being, because of the war between the United States and Iran, the Strait of Hormuz is clogged up. Oil's not flowing. Refineries aren't able to process downstream products of the crude oil and may need to shut down. So it's really important to prevent the refineries from shutting down to feed oil into the refinery, because if you shut down a refinery, it's going to take weeks, if not months, to reboot it. So it's really important to start flowing oil to these refineries. The G7 talked about releasing reserves. Also, the IEA announced, or will be announcing today, if they are going to release reserves. So it's going to be moving the markets. Oil is trading at about $85 a barrel right now, and natural gas is trading at 3.117. We're live streaming on YouTube, Brighteon we're live streaming on YouTube and Rumble. Also, my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can watch both versions on my website, the large screen and the one with the telemetry of the market. And we're simulcasting on X Spaces. Thank you for joining. Please share the links, ask your social media to follow me, and help support the work by getting the great products that I offer and making sure you subscribe to all my channels. You can follow me on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can also follow me on X and GETTR, TikTok, Substack, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee. There are many ways to follow the work that I publish. If you get the products that I offer on my store, the market just opened, but if you get the products that I sell on my online store and you use them regularly, you're going to be able to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. All these products that I offer, I take regularly. So please go to my store and get the great products that I offer. All right, since the market has opened, let's just do a recap of the opening here. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,790. All right, there is a strong support level at 6,660. All right, there's a strong support level at 6,600. Let's put it that way. And there's also another strong support level at 6,450. All right, so two support levels. We're trading above that support level. So if the markets get crazy with the energy and the equity market starts to sell off, don't worry. There's this major support level at 6,600, and there's another major support level at 6,450. Keep on buying equities. You're gonna be thanking yourself for buying equities during this crisis. I still have a target for year end of 7,400 for the S&P 500 to 7,800. So you're going to make some money on this. All right. In addition, the energy markets are wild. All right. It's not easy to trade, even for professionals. So if you can't take the volatility, don't do it. VIX, talking about volatility, the VIX index is trading at 24. I did a market update last Sunday, and I predict that there's a high potential of VIX going to 45 throughout this crisis. All right, so pay attention to that volatility. The Euro USD is trading at 115. The currency markets are relatively stable, and actually dollar is somewhat gaining momentum, and therefore, the United States is a safe haven. The Japanese yen is trading at 158.54. Oil is trading at 85.39, and Bitcoin is at 70,000. Now, in terms of ETFs for the energy sector, you want to take a look at Gush and DRIP. Gush is trading at 34.44. DRIP is the inverse of Gush. That's trading at 5.4. And UCO is long leveraged ETF for crude, and that's trading at 33.98. All right, with that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the products that I offer to help to improve your health and wellness. These are products that I use regularly. Get the structural nano silver soaps. They neutralize and help your skin. Use them daily. You can get it in lemongrass. I have it in stock in lemongrass and also in peppermint. Get a few bars for your household and use these very high quality soaps. I also have magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system, but also help with brain function. Magnesium is super important for brain function, and magnesium helps to improve the efficacy of vitamin D3. So when you're taking vitamin D3, it'll work better in your body when you're also taking magnesium. So please go to my store, get the magnesium and zinc, take it every day. And vitamin C and magnesium helps with the skin, helps with brain function, and helps with your immune system. You can take it with the magnesium and zinc, or you can take it also separately, but I recommend taking it together. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. With that, let's go to the markets. CNBC is what we're going to listen to first.
Yes. But I do think, in general, that when you have a conference call like Oracle, which was no longer just pound the chest, and just matter of fact and how big you are, and you know they're going to make money in the back end, that allows Nebius, that allows CoreWeave, that allows Core Scientific, it allows so much to go up. And I know that we have to talk about Hormuz, but if you were to talk about AI, Oracle tells you it's happening.
Yeah, leading the S&P this morning, as you said, it's accelerated its gains. Even some software skeptics like Ben Wright's Amelia saying this is probably going to bring some comfort to the group, although he sticks with a hold for now, Jim.
But I know that Ben, it's very funny, because Ben said, look, the call's a snoozer. And I was like hoping it would be a snoozer. What you wanted was just a good quarter, and you got a bird.
Yeah, that's the other thing the desks are saying is what they didn't even really have to raise their revenue guide by $1 billion.
No, they didn't. Now, the people who are buying it have to understand that they're going to drill you. They're going to drill you if they're at the market. Now, so that means that if you pay up, you got to remember that they have to raise $20 billion. But this kind of thing tells you, easy as pie. When you have that stock up, you want to raise $20 billion. It seems like you can do it in a couple of days. It's a remarkable thing, and it's a shame that it's being. Well, now it's really showing its true colors. I was just shocked when Morgan was on, and I love her show because you get a kind of good pre of what's going to happen, and you look at it and say, do they not know? Do these guests not know what's about to happen? I mean, this was Vesuvius, and all the people were betting against Oracle. I've seen them in their frescoes.
Yes. If you missed what Ellison said about these SaaS companies, take a listen.
Thank God we have these coding tools now that allow us to build a comprehensive set of software, agent-based software, to automate a complete ecosystem like healthcare or financial services. That's what we're doing at Oracle. That's why we think we're a disruptor. That's why we think the SaaS apocalypse applies to others, but not to us.
Now, you said yesterday that they never lack for confidence, right?
So I said that it's going to be great.
Yeah.
They on the palm school, they're like, well, they're coming out of the tunnel. You have to understand, they're doing.
There's the dry ice.
Yeah, and they're like coming out there, and you don't want to get in their way. And one of the things that I thought was incredible is I even thought that they might have to sell Cerner, which I think is a mistake. This goes against Epic, which is just unbelievably powerful. Get rid of hospital, you have Epic, it's everywhere. A great portal. I then felt into this that even.
All right, let's go to Al Jazeera. They're talking about the Strait of Hormuz and the trade disruption here.
Let's find out more about this, the impact on the global economy, with Frederick Schneider, who's an economist and a non-resident fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. He's joining us from Edinburgh in the UK. Thank you so much for your time. So nearly 1/5, as we saw there, of global oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, if Iran even partially disrupts this route, are we looking at a short-term market shock or a structural global energy crisis?
Well, the market is kind of split about that, and we see that in the volatility of the price. But in general, I think the impression is that there is an economic lose-lose situation for everybody, for Iran, for the United States, and that will force an end rather sooner than later. But I'm not that sure. I think the economic pressure is on, but there's no off-ramp really, neither for Trump, although Trump is waging a highly unpopular war. He's a very unpopular president. Inflation will only increase that, but I don't think he has a face-saving off-ramp, and he might just be carried away by the unstoppable momentum at the time.
So you don't think the U.S. is in a better position than most countries to absorb the shocks, or is it as vulnerable?
Well, I mean, the U.S. is energy independent, but of course it's part of global energy markets, and we have seen an increase in petrol prices, even in the U.S., by about 30% at the moment, and that's catastrophic for working class people, who are the constituency that Trump tries to appeal to during this election. So definitely there's some inflationary pressure even in the US.
Yeah, because energy prices, Frederick, the spike in prices does not just affect oil markets. They ripple through food production, fertilizer costs, and electricity prices. How quickly do you think households around the world will start feeling the consequences of this crisis?
Well, we're already seeing that, right? If you take Asia, for example, which is the primary place of demand for Gulf oil and fertilizers and gas, we see places like Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, India, they are all increasingly exposed to that. And we see them already taking measures like closing schools, putting university lectures online, implementing four-day work weeks, rationing gas supplies away from industry towards households, etc. So we already see that. Same in Europe. I just came back from Germany, and I saw prices at the pump above €2. Gas prices have shot up by 70%. So we're already seeing that around the.
So if the conflict persists, Frederick, do you think we could see, geopolitical realignments in energy markets accelerate, particularly among Asian importers who are heavily dependent on Gulf oil?
The intention is definitely there. It will depend a little bit on, what if we have stagflation, we also have high interest rates, and that makes borrowing difficult to invest into these things. But definitely, for example, consumers will be driven towards buying EVs. They will be driven to buying heat pumps, rooftop solar. There will be a drive to just diversify hydrocarbon sources, definitely. And this will have some long-term.
People are being stupid. You know why? EVs, if you look at the net inputs to create an EV, it's actually worse for the environment than a combustion engine, all right, because of the lithium battery. In addition, EVs cost a lot. They're not durable. You can't keep an EV for 6 years. It's like driving an iPad, all right? So to replace the powertrain in an EV is very costly. Take a look at the aftermarket for an EV. Is it really good? A pure EV. Hybrids are a little different, but a pure EV, there's no aftermarket. Why? Because they're trashed. You can't, these batteries they're not, it's not a vehicle that has durability. In addition, when you plug in your EV, it's going into the grid. Now, unless you have solar panels on your home, which most people do not have, but if you're plugging it into the grid, where do you think that energy is coming from? Most of the grid in the United States is based on coal and natural gas. Now, if the feedstock is natural gas, these energy markets aren't just crude oil, it's also natural gas. So natural gas is going up and crude's going up. So getting an EV isn't going to help you because you're still going to have elevated electricity bills. Stupid. All right. With that, let's go to, I want to listen to the BBC here. Day 12.
Well, let's turn now to David Metzer. He's an Israeli government spokesperson in the office of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Martha. Good to be with you.
Yeah, Sarah.
Sarah, excuse me.
No, that's okay.
Sorry, Sarah.
That's okay. The new Ayatollah we were hearing there about Saudi Arabia waiting to see what direction he's going to take Iran in. What do you know of him the son, of course, of the last Ayatollah, Ali Khamenei.
Well, Israel and the US haven't undertaken this action to replace one Ayatollah with another Ayatollah. We're confronting this regime that is racing towards nuclear weapons. They're building ballistic missiles and unleashing terrorist proxies across our region. So what this Operation Roaring Lion is all about is about removing that threat before it becomes irreversible.
Do you have any information about him? I mean, because one thing Israel has made clear is just how good its intelligence on those within Iran is. What information do you have about him? Do you know, for example, how badly he has been injured?
I've got nothing to share with you, but what I can tell you is to the people of Iran, and also to the many Iranians in the diaspora, but ultimately to the people of Iran, they should well understand, and if they're able to listen to the BBC in Iran, our Prime Minister said this very, very clearly, we are waging an historic war for your liberty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the Iranian people to remove the Ayatollah regime and gain your own freedom. And together with the United States, we're hitting the tyrants of Tehran harder than ever before.
Okay, so
the old Ayatollah is no more, and I want you to know that neither Israel or the US or the people of Iran or the US want him to be replaced with just another tyrant. So the time is coming soon for the Iranian people to react.
Right, but okay, I'm going to come to the moment. I just want to know, I was asking you about the Ayatollah, the new Ayatollah. We haven't heard from him yet. Does he have a target on his head, or is it conceivable that Israel could negotiate with him?
The Prime Minister made clear last night that we're not replacing one Ayatollah with another. 85% of the Iranian people are against this regime. You just played a clip of the funeral for the previous Ayatollah. Don't be fooled. You will have seen the scenes of jubilation amongst diaspora Iranians as well as the brave Iranians on the streets of Tehran and in other cities. They understand right now that this battle, although it is unpleasant for them, of course, to be in that city, we are targeting every single element of the regime. But ultimately, maybe not today or tomorrow, but the Iranian people will soon have an opportunity to act. We are creating the conditions for the Iranian people to do so. We've hit countless regime targets.
Yeah, and everyone's watching that. But there is potentially a very big problem here. And it was perhaps summed up by Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, who's among more than 100 signatories urging the Prime Minister here not to get drawn into the conflict. And her argument is that what is happening in Iran is in danger of entrenching the authoritarians in the regime and is counterproductive to what your stated aim is, that Iranians could rise up and should rise up and overthrow it.
Look, in January, all of us around the world saw the will of the Iranian people, 85% of them. They said to us very clearly, help us shake off the yoke of tyranny. Now, the UK getting involved is, if I may say, Sarah, is neither here nor there. This was never about the UK being involved. This was an Israeli
but her point
UK operation.
US
We've
operation.
taken out thousands, an Israeli-US operation. We've taken out thousands of the IRGC thugs and hundreds
yes, but
of
her argument, and the argument is that what you're doing could be counterproductive because you are entrenching the authoritarians rather
Absolutely
than...
not.
Because
Absolutely
people...
not. Iran is not Afghanistan. Iran is not Iraq. Iran has a vibrant middle class. They are an educated people. They are a proud people, and they have said very clearly to whoever's listening.
Exactly. They have a large secular society. If you look back before the Ayatollah, Iran looks like a very modern society, secular society. So they're very educated. They want freedom. They want to be part of the world community and contribute to modernity. all right, and not be stuck in the Middle Ages with, you know, old ways of religious ways of Muhammad, all right? But it has a problem, and that problem is that they're under the tyranny of a theocratic regime. And that theocratic regime controls a military called the IRGC. So you have to destroy the IRGC and the theocratic regime. Now, they have a lot of oil. Afghanistan was in the Middle Ages. We literally bombed a group of people that lived in caves and in tents. It's hard for a military like ours to really put a lot of pressure in Afghanistan when people are already living in the Middle Ages. Iraq is a little different. Iraq had cities, had lots of culture. I mean, some people believe that civilization started in Iraq, all right? But the point here is that Iraq didn't have really a cohesive country. It's like sectarian, it's divided into three factions. And modern day Iraq is really the creation of Western nations, I believe, after World War I. But somewhere around World War I because of oil, all right? So they have lots of oil, really important for the energy market. They had civilization, but because of the infighting between the three factions, the population in Iraq isn't as educated. It's not as secular as what you have in a larger nation like Iran. So if we could stabilize the oil flows to help the world economy, because everyone's having a problem, if we could stabilize the oil flows and have that to help to rebuild Iran, after we kill off the theocratic regime in the IRGC, there'll be money there to rebuild the nation and to help to bolster up a constitutional republic. Now, it's important that bringing the Shah back, the Shah's son or grandson, whatever it is, back. Oh, by the way, he has no political experience, and he's been living in exile for all of his life. But having the Shah come back, the Shah's family come back as some sort of monarchy is also wrong, because the educated, secular part of Iran can govern itself through a constitutional republic. We can use our system of government, not a parliamentary system, but our system of government, a balance of powers between a legislative branch, executive branch, and a judicial branch, and where it's bicameral, a Senate and a House of Representatives. When you do that, and you leverage to stabilize the economy in the currency markets, the IMF and the World Bank, and we as a nation and some allies, using some parts of the UN as an institution to help to make sure there are free elections, Iran can be a constitutional republic. And that's what Trump should be saying. That's what Trump should be saying. The end game here is we kill the Ayatollah, the theocratic regime. We destroy the IRGC. We use the international community economically and politically to be able to bolster up a constitutional republic for secular Iran. That's the end game. That's what he needs to say. Because when we do that, we are giving birth, the United States is giving birth to a free society in Iran. My concern is that Trump, maybe the CIA, other countries, they're going to look for an easy solution and bring the Shah's relatives back, or maybe make a deal with some sort of light Ayatollah so they could be a puppet to stabilize the region and make sure oil flows are happening. But if you do that, most likely you're still going to have infighting within the country. And between the secular part of society and a monarchy or a theocracy. And if you, especially with the Ayatollah, the theocracy, if we allow for them to remain, then Trump gets out of office, they slowly reconstitute their military and their weaponry and their nuclear capability, maybe even biological weapons. And we know all about that, right? How are we gonna deal with the problem then? We're never gonna have a president like Trump ever again. In our lifetime, we will never see a president like Donald Trump. There will not be a president that's willing to do what he's doing. This is our last shot to do it. This is our only hope to make sure that we get the job done. If we fail at this, future generations will suffer. Now, they're either going to suffer through biological warfare, chemical warfare, and or nuclear warfare. So killing the regime and taking some pain through the energy markets is better off in the long run. Because if you kick the can down the road, if you try to use expediency to solve this problem, what's going to happen? Future generations are literally going to die, and it's going to be measured in mega deaths, not just 6 here, 10 here, 100 there, 1,000 there. It's going to be measured in millions.
But unfortunately, there seems to be a huge vacuum and miscommunication within Tehran. So the more dovish side of the regime, or the civil side of the regime, the president, the foreign ministry, the ambassador, wants to de-escalate with the region, but perhaps the Revolutionary Guard have a different agenda. Of course, killing the Ayatollah in the beginning of the war might have seen as a strategic win for Israel and the United States, but this is the downside, that there is nobody calling the shots. And all hopes now is to see what the new Ayatollah, if
see, all these news medias and even corporate America, they just want expedience. They just want a simple, quick solution. Who's going to be the leader? No, that's the wrong question. It's the will of the people of Iran, the educated, the secular, throwing off the yoke of the theocracy and the tyranny of the IRGC. That's the real question there. When's the international community going to work together to give birth to a constitutional republic in Iran? That's too scholarly for these stupids that are on the BBC and CNN and Fox and Live Now and all of them, all of the mainstream media, all of it. All the talking heads, all the international experts, they're all fucking stupid. Because none of them are talking about what I'm saying. And I'm never wrong. Pay attention. A constitutional republic is the only answer for Iran. Because if we don't get a constitutional republic, we will have more war in that region.
Within the administration and in the Republican Party about last week's oil spike. I think right now Republicans see it as a manageable problem so long as it's not a persistent issue for the GOP. But there's definitely, what I'm sensing is some nervousness about that, for sure.
Well, that essentially will come down to the cost of living, of course, which, of course, he was elected to solve. Politico are reporting today that gas prices in the Cincinnati area have gone from 264.
So what? So what? So what? Like General Keane said on Fox News, take the pain so the future generations will benefit. Getting rid of the theocracy of Iran, getting rid of their military capability, and having the chance to boot a constitutional republic in Iran is worth it. Because in the end, energy will be more secure. The world will be more secure. Most of the terrorism in the world that's Islamic terrorism is coming from Iran, directly or through proxies. So knocking that out, you're knocking out a huge percentage of the funding mechanism of Islamic terror. And oh, by the way, what about payback? What about payback for the coal, the bombing of the coal? What about payback for the Iran hostage crisis? What about the payback for the Beirut bombing of the Marine barracks in the 80s? Oh, did we forget? They keep on saying the theocratic side of Iran is saying that we're the great Satan. They need to destroy us. So if they have capability like biologic, chemical, radiologic, don't you think they'll use it? They have drones, they have ballistic missiles, and they're hitting their neighbors. What do you think they would do with an intercontinental missile? Oh, you're worried about the gas prices. You're worried about the cost of energy. In the long run, the world will be better off. This is why I keep on saying, don't look at this from a short-term fix. It's got to be a long-term solution. Do you think if we had a containment policy for the Nazis during World War II, that the United States would have emerged as such a hegemonic power? The world was better off by absolutely destroying Germany. The world was better off absolutely destroying the Japanese Empire. Quick solutions, they don't last. It's kicking the can down the road. And the whole problem in the Middle East has been this issue, kicking the can down the road for decades.
To see some of the developments there. So having the resource to speak to people to get the most up-to-date in this fast-changing situation.
The UAE has obviously established itself as a safe haven in the region. I mean, it does very well from that. It profits enormously from it. That has undoubtedly been damaged. There must be some sensitivity about the reporting, if not to spread panic, but also to protect and defend what is so dear to the UAE.
I think it's not about sensitivity. It's about accuracy. Again, as I said, in a fast-moving situation. Also, as you said, it's a safe haven. There are people here from all walks of life who have had different experiences, and there are different industries. We've just had Iranian state media saying that this is a war on infrastructure, and infrastructure in any war, in any country, is part of the national security, is an extension of national security. And, you know, I'm sure you, like I, have covered wars in different times where you have to be very careful that what information is being shared and what information we can have is not actually becoming part of the war effort or war propaganda.
Do you get a sense that the interceptors which are being fired to bring down these missiles and drones that are incoming, that there are enough stocks of that, or is there some apprehension about that?
I think the stocks
I
are
don't
depleting.
think that's the sort of issue that you can go with a sense, even though we are hearing global officials now saying how they feel about something or they sense something. It is about facts on the ground and what's there. There isn't apprehension because, again, the officials we speak to, the sources we speak to, are quite confident of their abilities. And also, let's not forget, from Italy to France to South Korea, there are many countries.
There's
that are
breaking
now
news
part
on
of this
CNBC right now. IAE releases 400 million
Now,
barrels.
one important thing to note here is that we do have to see what the flow rate is going to be. The headline number here, 400 million barrels, the largest reserves tapping. But the question now turns to how quickly can those barrels get out of storage? It's not necessarily immediate. Also, we're waiting for details here on the extent to which it's going to be crude releases versus product releases, because that is going to impact how these markets trade looking forward. But WTI now here up some 2% as these 32 member countries announced the largest tapping of strategic reserves in history amid the disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. Guys?
So, Pippa, just some context, that's about double what we got in 22. And you mentioned the flow, that's going to be an important number, but also mix is going to be important because some countries have crude to offer and some have refined.
That's right. So in Europe, it's primarily refined products, while in the U.S., it is essentially all actual oil. And what we're seeing here now is that it's not just oil, it is also very much a product story, given how much passes through the Strait of Hormuz and how key that area is for refining. And so the extent to which this trickles through to things like RBOB and diesel, both key, of course, for the economy, diesel known as the tax on the consumer, remains to be seen. Also, a lot of the diesel that's refined in the United States does come from those heavy distillate barrels out of Saudi Arabia. So we have to see what the mix breakdown is. And finally, just one thing to add, there is not an SDR equivalent for natural gas. So continue to watch TTF in Europe as well as in Asia, because Qatar's facility, Ras Laffan, being offline, that's 20%. And so that could be the longer term story here.
All right, oil, WTI futures are trading at 84.63. Natural gas is trading at 3.088. Gush, which is a long ETF for energy companies, with this news, it's starting to go down a little bit. It's at 34.74, and DRIP, which is the inverse of Gush, it's slowly creeping up at 5.397.
But of course, we saw that wild volatility yesterday as well as Monday. And so as more trickles out in terms of what's actually happening in the Strait of Hormuz, no doubt we'll see more swings in oil prices today.
Great, Pippa, thank you very much. Pippa Stevens. And just to check on gas prices, which this is how it trickles down to the consumer, average gas price is around $3.48 a gallon. And we've noted the 20% increase since the war began and what that might mean. I just wanted to show you the long-term chart, though, to the context point, on gas prices. It's happened fast, it's painful, you feel that, every day when you're driving. However, we're only at the highest level since, around 2023 or so. In 2022, we saw about $4 a gallon gasoline when we had that inflation spike. Remember when President Biden went out and tapped the SDR,
People need to understand, with the flow not happening through the Strait of Hormuz, the refineries only have X amount of crude on hand to be able to keep the refinery open. They can't go to like 25% operation. The max that you can go is like 50% of throughput. So if you don't have enough crude coming in that's on order and coming to the port, and you don't have enough in reserves next to the refinery will have to shut down. So all downstream products are going to suffer. All. There's the problem. Because once you shut down a refinery, you can't just turn it back on. It takes weeks or months to boot it back up. So this is going to be a major problem in all downstream products: gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, plastics, pharmaceuticals. Also, in some cases, fertilizer. Anything that uses crude oil is going to suffer. And if you look at our modern society, almost everything in your life is tied to crude. Everything. So if you think that you're going to be able to weather the storm by just putting a solar panel on your house and you know, living off the grid and all this stuff, you can't live without oil. We cannot have a modern society. You can't even have modern medicine without oil. Our modern medicine would be back into the 1700s if it wasn't for crude. And a lot of people don't understand this. So they have to release the reserves and some of the products that are in reserve by these countries to try to help with the price. But those oil reserves, they need to be fed to the refineries so they don't shut down, because you can't boot them up right away. All right, this is major. Okay, with that, I want to listen to what Bloomberg is saying about this topic here.
It still doesn't match that size of the tax yet, of the tax cut. And I think that's important. What we will be testing now is the volatility in financial markets does undermine the confidence of affluent consumers. And we may be challenging the K-shaped narrative on the economy.
Diane, can I ask you about your view on the labor market after the disappointing jobs number that we had, I guess just last week, it feels like years ago. How does the labor market in the U.S. look to you right now? Because you mentioned there isn't any immigration, and we do see still double-digit margins for company earnings. So it should be, I would imagine, this kind of growth that companies are looking for employees. It doesn't appear that way in the numbers.
No, it doesn't. And I think what's important is I would argue the largest single factor suppressing employment last year was uncertainty. The only sector we saw gains in was countercyclical, which is healthcare and social assistance, which tends to add jobs almost no matter what. And of course, when we had a major strike in that industry and all the...
All right, I'm going back to CNBC here.
Chart, it's kind of where it should bottom, if it's going to bottom in this neighborhood. So if we're going to get past the Iran stuff, we also have to look to, well, we get past the private banking issues, and watching these private capital stocks, if they can act better amid just widespread pessimism.
Let's go to BBC.
We focus our discussion around these three topics: the situation is running in the Middle East in the days and weeks to come, hormuz trade and freedom of navigation, and the way to address economic consequences, if you all agree. And so, Donald, if you agree, I give you the floor. Merci beaucoup.
This is the G7 summit.
Well, I do agree, and I think we're having a tremendous impact, unbelievable actually, impact
This is Trump.
on the world, because we're destroying a great producer of terror. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It goes back 47 years.
You know, another thing that's important here, the audio on that G7, it was being recorded off a cell phone, so that's the reason why the audio was so bad. But another important feature here is Trump is the 47th president of the United States. We have the anniversary of the 250th celebration of the founding of the nation. And I don't find it as just a coincidence, because I think Trump is blessed. Don't understand why, but he's blessed, all right? He's the 47th president, destroying Iran. And this all started 47 fucking years ago because of the Iran hostage crisis. I'm telling you, what happened back then in the 70s is directly tied to what's happening today. It's almost like we went into a time warp. or some sort of looped timeline, but 2026 is looped into the Iran hostage crisis, and it is time for us to destroy them. All right, let's listen into Al Jazeera here.
On video by eyewitnesses across Israeli territory of air defenses unable to intercept those missiles. And let's just remind our viewers, according to Israeli sources, up to 50% of the missiles that Israel uses have cluster warheads, which means that they split into several missiles, really, with a radius of up to 10 kilometers. That means that rescue workers and emergency workers have to comb that radius for hours in order to make sure that there are no unexploded ordnance to really verify where they fell. We've seen reports of several fires in impact sites, but the Israeli military censor insists that all missiles fired overnight and today did not cause any damage.
But the threat is clearly persistent, Noor, and Israel is engaged on another front in the north with Lebanon. How is that affecting the mood at home? How are people coping with this constant state of war?
Hey, it's time. This thing has been going on for 3,000 years. It's time to end it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the omega-3. This will help with your cardiovascular health. You should be taking this every day. How it works is it brings down inflammation, and it also helps to improve your lipid profile. When you do that, you're reducing plaque formation. Super important. Please go to my store and get the omega-3. And a dual-purpose product that I have on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, olive leaf extract. This will help to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular health. It brings down inflammation, helps with the lipid profile. You can stack them together to get a synergistic benefit to help with your cardiovascular health, but you also are helping your immune system, right? So you get more bang for your buck. So please go to my store, get the omega-3 and the olive leaf extract so you're healthy, so you see the actual destruction of Iran by the United States. Because you know what? It's been 47 years in the making.
Fury, the U.S. pounding Iranian warships as the regime retaliates against its neighbors across the region.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yates joins us live from Tel Aviv with the latest. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, Lawrence, good morning. It was another sleepless night here in Tel Aviv as air raid sirens blared across the city 4 separate times, sending people into bomb shelters, many missiles intercepted overhead as the Israelis and the Americans continue to degrade the Iranian regime and their ability to launch these types of attacks against Israel and regional Gulf countries. We have some aftermath inside of Iran showing you some of the damage, not only around the capital of Tehran, but other areas. There is a concerted effort by the Americans and the Israelis to degrade Iran's ability to respond with attacks, including ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke today about the ongoing success of this operation.
We are in a campaign against a cruel enemy that wants to destroy us. We crushed their nuclear and ballistic capabilities in Operation Rising Lion. Afterwards, instead of learning the lesson, they tried to redevelop them and bury them deep underground in such a way that we could no longer target them.
The Israelis are looking east. They're also looking north at the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. Some new strikes there overnight.
And no one's talking about
individuals.
No one's
not only to Hezbollah, but
none
also
of
the
this.
IRGC.
None of the mainstream media is talking about this. If a theocratic regime is allowed to remain, even if we destroy a lot of their military capability, you have a lot of smart people in Iran. All right? A lot of very educated, smart, Ph.D. level in engineering and in science. They can make biologic weapons. So even if we are able to destroy their nuclear capability, The barriers of entry for biological weapons is very low. Doesn't cost as much energy, doesn't cost as much time, doesn't cost as much footprint. It's hard to detect. So don't you think that if the Ayatollah, don't you think that if this theocratic regime is allowed to stay semi-alive, they will take the opportunity, it may take decades, but they will take the opportunity to develop chemical and biological weapons. In the size of a home, small home, all right? Size of 1,000 square feet, you can easily develop a biological weapon to kill half of the population in the United States. All right? So don't you think that it is very important to make sure that the theocratic regime is absolutely, completely fucking destroyed? But the problem is most podcasters, they don't have a science background. Most people in media, they're too stupid. They don't see the black swan around the corner if the job isn't done right. Because if the job's not done right, it creates a situation that's pernicious and that can lead to a catastrophe. Now, if you're the Ayatollah, the son of the Ayatollah, or grandson, or one of the high-level clerics, and you're allowed to stay alive, and you somehow can maintain power in Iran because of expediency of the Western powers, and they want just a quick solution, don't you think that you'll wait 47 years to unleash a biological weapon? Don't you think that they'll wait to say, you know what, we will, I mean, the religion believes in setting the whole damn world aflame to usher in their messianic era. Don't you think that that's a problem? Don't you think that we need to become a little bit Caesar-ish? Don't you think we should become Caesar and go into Gaul and chop off their fucking heads? Yeah. Yeah, that is the answer.
Know that according to the IDF, they have moved a brigade, the Golani Brigade that was inside Gaza, to the northern border in preparation for more offensive actions against Hezbollah. A top spokesperson for the Israeli military talking about this operation.
In recent days, something's different. In recent days, we've identified that Hezbollah is trying to increase the firing towards northern communities and expand the range of fire to additional areas in the country. Hezbollah is taking heavy blows. We are deepening the damage to its capabilities with each passing day and increasing the pressure on it.
We're tracking a lot of developments here, not just from Lebanon, but also in Iran this week. There were pro-regime demonstrations. You can see people here chanting in support of Mossadegh Khamenei, the new supreme leader of Iran. What you're not seeing in the streets of Iran right now is the anti-regime demonstrations, because there is real concern about another crackdown against those civilians. We know earlier this year, an estimated 32,000 people were killed in those protests. Guys?
Well, Trey, what did Netanyahu mean when he said to the Iranian people, in the coming days will bring opportunity to free yourselves?
I'm working on some reporting on this specific topic right now, but there are clearly things going on behind the scenes that indicate the Americans and the Israelis want to empower the Iranian civilians who are against this brutal regime to go to the streets once again. We don't know exactly when that will happen or if the conditions will remain in a way that would allow them to go to the streets and not be killed by security forces. But we do know, as a result of Operation Epic Fury, many of the people responsible for the crackdown on protesters have been taken out, and the besieged forces and IRGC headquarters in Tehran have been destroyed in this operation. And so these heavy blows will continue to be inflicted on the Iranian regime, and we can expect an increase in strikes throughout the day today and even into tonight.
Hey, your reporting that you started off with when it comes to the brigade that was on the Gaza border from Israel, Is that a ground force that's making its way?
Yes, it is, Lawrence. It's a ground force. The Golani Brigade was one of the, you could describe them as the tip of the spear for the Israelis when they were entering on the ground to fight Hamas inside Gaza. We met many of these soldiers throughout the course of the war, and they are trained ground fighters. They have the ability to go into Lebanon deeper if the Israelis make that decision. Right now, we know there are tanks and troops deployed in southern Lebanon. Over the weekend, 2 Israeli soldiers were actually killed by Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. But it's an incredibly difficult terrain to operate in, and again, an indication of why they are moving the Golani Brigade, a brigade that has this fighting experience.
So, Trey, a little bit of analysis and mixing with the reporting with this question. Why do you think the Arab Gulf states, I just saw it today, Saudi Arabia stopped ballistic missiles aimed at Prince Sultan Air Base. We saw the UAE been targeted again yesterday. At what point do they start standing up for themselves and hitting back? Do you think the
very soon?
Israeli forces...
Very soon. Qatar's representatives have basically said that this is a sovereignty issue. Iran bombing Qatar is an act of war. So you have nations, and here's the thing. A lot of people don't understand. You have the Sunnis and the Shia. Iran is Shia. A lot of the other Gulf states are Sunni, all right? But they have populations that are small that are Shia. And so, you know, they're a little bit worried of maybe some instability in their country. But Iran bombing the neighboring countries in the Gulf is only going to galvanize the Allied forces to kick the shit out of Iran. Now, this has been coming. This thing has been in the works of karma for the last 47 years. Iran, theocratic regime, and the IRGC cannot and should not be allowed safe harbor. They need to be destroyed. Now, there's 2 paths. Surrender or die. Those are the 2 paths. It's not maybe, you know, we'll make a deal. That is the real option set. If we try to find a middle road to that and to allow parts of the IRGC to remain, or some sort of theocratic regime to rule Iran, it's only going to make things worse down the road. The problem that Israel has with Hezbollah and Hamas is that they didn't get the job done. They didn't get the job done in the 70s. They didn't get the job done. Israel didn't get the job done in the 80s. Israel didn't get the job done in the 90s. Israel didn't get the job done in 2000s. Israel didn't get the job done in 2010s. And Israel is now waking up and realizing, you know what? Maybe we need to get the job done. But you have half of the population in Israel that doesn't want the war. Oh, it so happens to be that most of that population doesn't even follow Torah law. They're so secular that they're super liberal. And you have a lot of the media out there that is looking for Trump to fail. They're not on Team America. They're on Team Iran. Oh, we're going to have higher energy prices. Oh, it's going to hurt the economy. It's hurting the stock market. That's all short term. And if you play it smart, you can make money in it. Even if you don't want to play the energy sector because it's too volatile, just buy into equities. When this is all said and done, you're seeing a 7,000, 8,000 S&P 500. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. But the thing is that America needs to get the job done. And we will never have a president, never, ever, 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 ever again, not Rubio, not J.D. Vance, not Gavin Newsom, whoever it is, for the next 50 or 100 years, we will never have a president that was willing to take the risks to knock out Iran as we do with the 47th president of the United States. It's the same person, but the 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump 1.0, was too fucking afraid. Just like Obama, just like Biden, just like George Bush Sr. and Jr. and Clinton. And even Reagan was afraid. Because if you pay attention to the tanker wars in the 80s in this region, Reagan wasn't willing to get the job done. Now, if Reagan got the job done then, we wouldn't be in this problem. But he was afraid. So, since Donald Trump 2.0 is a different type of president, we finally have a president, the 47th president of the United States, willing to get the job done. But I am worried that a little bit of Trump 1.0 is going to say, maybe I can make a deal with the Ayatollah. Maybe I can make a deal with a lesser version of the IRGC. Maybe I can make a deal with the Shah's family. I have good relationships with President Xi. And it's such a stupid comment. You know why? Because if you have a good relationship with the President Xi, that doesn't mean that the next president. So the president represents the United States. It's not your personal relationship. So Trump worries me. Trump, I think he's on the right path, but there's still an element of 1.0 Trump where you look for expediency. That is definitely the wrong path. So what if we have $200 oil, which we're not going to have? But so what? So what? Stop complaining. Buy the futures. Make money in it. So what? The real issue is destroying the enemy. I mean, we do not even have the Constitution, the wherewithal in our citizenry to be able to weather the storm of the Iran war because of higher gas prices. Can you imagine what people had to go through during World War II in the shortages they had? I mean, there were rationings that were taking place with food. People are still living high on the hog today. Compare what people were living during World War II to right now what's happening. And we have people that aren't willing to get behind the president and actually support the war effort. Think about that. We have lost our war ethos. Pete Hegseth is right. Look at the military. The military is doing a great job now, but the military that he inherited when he became Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War right now, all right, was a neutered military, a military of DEI, a military that couldn't even do sit-ups or push-ups or run a mile. Too many generals, too many participation medals, and no war that was won. We didn't win Afghanistan. We didn't win Iraq. The bottom line here is this. The United States needs to have a stronger backbone. And the population, it's not there. It's not there. You see it in the mainstream media. Oh, your gas prices are going to go up, so we got to shut down the war. Well, what about kicking the can down the road? What about dealing with the problem? If you have cancer, but the treatment for cancer is painful, do you stop the treatment? Let's say there is a high probability of having your cancer go into remission or to be cured of it, but you have to go through some pain. Do you go through the pain? Or do you just say, I don't want the pain anymore, I'm just going to die from cancer? That's the situation that we have with Iran. Take the pain now, and things will be better in the future. That's what the greatest generation did. The greatest generation went to war, and they had food rations, they had, rationing of energy. But today, oh my God, people start having a mental meltdown. The energy prices are so high, and they're so stressed because of the news. And so they have to take their mental medications because they have, anxiety and all this crap. They couldn't even, if you teleported these people into the 1940s, they wouldn't be able to survive. They're weak. They're weak. What about teleporting these people that can't deal with the stress and the anxiety of the news? Teleport them during the Great Depression. This is a major problem in the United States when it comes to its population. Now, Pete Hegseth is fixing the military part of it, but we still have a bunch of wussies in our country that are willing to get behind something that's really important, that will last generations.
Would like them to do that. This is another great question, and I want to be careful with my reporting here. I'm also working on a story about this, but there are conversations happening behind the scenes about possible involvement of Gulf states. They understand they're taking a massive amount of ballistic missile fire and drone attacks against not just U.S. military targets in their countries, but also the civilian population there. And so certainly this is a consideration. I've also been talking with Gulf sources, and they say there is a red line. We're trying to understand what that red line is as these attacks unfold. But the fact that we're seeing drone attacks and missile attacks against cities like Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai, these are areas where international tourists go. We know there were thousands of American citizens earlier in this war that had just been vacationing there. These are countries that are not used to taking this type of incoming fire, very different from Israel. And so those conversations are taking place, and considerations are underway about more involvement, possibly not just defensive, but also offensive capabilities.
It would be a game changer.
Yeah, and you know what I thought about? We interviewed someone, wasn't the lady we interviewed? She was stuck, she was an American, she was stuck in Dubai. And I instantly thought, like, these drone attacks are happening where a lot of Americans are not able to leave. Have the Americans who have wanted to get out, have they been allowed to get out now?
Yeah, absolutely. Tens of thousands of Americans have been able to leave the Middle East as a result of efforts that were made by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Assistant Secretary of State Dylan Johnson, and others who have been behind the scenes working with not only charter flights, but also ground transportation and coordination to get Americans out of harm's way at no cost. And so that has been a very successful effort so far. We've even seen some of the video of Americans returning, for example, to Dulles Airport outside of Washington after they've been able to get out of the Middle East. And so we understand these efforts will continue, but so far tens of thousands of Americans have been able to come home in the aftermath of this war beginning.
All right, thanks so much, Trey.
Thanks, Trey.
Are they trying to get an economic toll, have the region pay an economic toll, we'll pay an economic toll? The one way to do it, to bring that price of oil down and gas, is to start escorting the ships. I hope we start doing that. Yeah. The minute the escorts stop, you're going to watch the price per barrel go down. It's already down in the 85 from 120.
It did go down.
Meanwhile, now let's go to Steve Harrigan, who is live at the border between Iran and Armenia. Steve.
U.S. Central Command saying that
Pluto TV has a universe of free content. This is the message. Pluto TV is always.
U.S. Central Command saying that they have destroyed 16 mine-laying Iranian ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, that narrow waterway is where 1/5 of the world's oil flows through. President Trump issuing a stark warning, posting, if for any reason mines were placed and they are not removed forthwith, the military consequences to Iran will be at a level never seen before. Central Command also posting the following numbers. They say that 50 Iranian Navy vessels have been destroyed, basically rendering Iran's Navy combat ineffective. Also, there have been 140 injured U.S. service members. Of those injuries, just 8 seriously injured. And finally, a stark warning on potential internal dissent in Iran. Iran's police chief saying that protesters on the street will be treated like enemies of the state and that security forces have their fingers on the triggers. Guys, back to you.
Hey, so Steve, just real quick on the pace, it doesn't seem like a lot of people are trying to get out of Iran through that border area that you're at, right? Just a trickle?
They're not. It's a sleepy little town, 2 or 3 a day. We spoke to some this morning, and that could change in a hurry. This is really one easy, free way out. The border is open.
All right. Thanks so much.
Steve.
All right, before we continue with Fox News, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This stack that I'm going to show you is going to help with your brain function, cardiovascular, and also your immune system. Ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels and helps to control your blood glucose levels. Super important to take every day. Take ashwagandha root. You can take it separately, but if you stack it the way I'm telling you to, you're going to get added benefits. Lignans will help with the immune system and also your endocrine system. Soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation. And turmeric soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation. You stack these together and take it every day. What's going to happen is that by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. By bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you're boosting up your immune system and your endocrine system. And by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals at the brain level, you are protecting your neurons. Because neurons, when they're stressed, will start to recede with their connections between each other, and your memory will decline and your cognition will decline. You want to improve that positive neuroplasticity, and you do that by making sure you soak up free radicals and keep the inflammation down. So please go to my store, get the turmeric, get the lignans, and get the ashwagandha root. Stack them together, very powerful stack, to slow down the aging process. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, and you save $5. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and oh, by the way, you're going to make money if you put some money in the stock market, S&P 500. So I just told you how to make money and also how to live longer. Back to the war.
That the U.S. eliminated, our military eliminated 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels. And I asked, what are these mine vessels? And they refer to Iran deploying these naval mines via small boats in the Strait of Hormuz to disrupt global oil shipping. The mines are used for blockading the narrow Strait of Hormuz. They are considered cheap but deadly underwater weapons designed to deny access, damage commercial tankers, and close the waterway. And Donald Trump has said he will completely destroy these mine-laying vessels. 10 of them were inactive, he said, that he previously destroyed. But he says, if you do this, we will hit back harder.
Yeah, I mean, why the Iranians thought that they can do any type of combat operation within the water and we not find out about it is ludicrous to me. The Navy has no shot going against our Navy as well as the intelligence that we have. The General Jack King was talking about the operation. And have they been successful thus far? Watch.
The offensive operation is succeeding daily to strip away all of their offensive capability, ballistic missiles and drones. And we're penetrating underneath the ground to underground sites to get those missiles, take down those launchers, take down the transportation that moves them, take down the command and control. It is a systematic, deliberate approach to do it. And the same thing with the drones. And the proof is there. Objectively, the percentage of their ability to retaliate is down way over 90%. And that is quite remarkable in itself.
Right. With those boats, it looks like we've destroyed 50 of the main naval vessels that they have, but 80% of the small boats are still out. And they say they got between 2,000 and 5,000 mines.
So they have to stay on top of it. But if they could just get the escort, a system of escorting these barges out, then oil and gas will begin to drop. And guess what? China, we only get 5% of our oil and gas there. China gets about 50% of their oil, and their oil goes through there. So the world would benefit from that. I just wonder how soon until we decide to grab that Carg Island, where 90% of all the Iranian oil is shipped. We have that. You want the ultimate leverage. We have it.
There it is on the map.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that that's something the president's talked about since the 80s. Everyone knows it, and that would really get their attention. So I think that.
What are you hearing, Brian, about the hesitation as it relates to the island?
Well, the hesitation would be there might be a temporary uptick in oil and oil because with us, the transition of us being in control of it, the Iranians get pushed out of it. There might be very little coming out of there. But Iran can't exist economically without it. So if you want to create ultimate leverage on a regime that they're so scared, they're afraid to put their supreme leader out in public, I think that's one way to do it. If you're in control of it, you literally are doing what you did with Delcy Rodriguez. We took all their ships and said, nothing's coming in or out. We'll control your oil. We flipped the government, take Maduro out, and now we're refining their oil. So
you bring up a good point. The new leader, who you had heard, you had asked, was his leg amputated? We've heard he was injured in that first attack. He hasn't been seen, hasn't come out at all. So is he still alive? Is he in hiding?
There's some reporting about it. I mean, we haven't confirmed ourselves, but there's some reporting in the Times today to talk about some sources saying that they've seen him amputated, but we haven't independently confirmed.
And back to your original question, when you read Netanyahu's call for them to rise up, it says get ready to rise up.
Yeah.
That means I think the Mossad's doing some great work on the ground, eliminating leaders, because nobody has better intelligence. They've already shown us this over the last 2 years, 3 years, about the Iranian society, who's in command and who's going to be dead, than Israel.
Real quickly, Brian, that's a good point, because it looks like even this new supreme leader doesn't have as much power because of his father planned for all of these little brigades to have their own command. And I think that's what's happening. That's why some of the Gulf states are being targeted, is that you don't have one person leading the operation right now. You have all these little guys that are running their own little divisions.
Yeah, if there was one guy more powerful, it's not the president, it's Ali Larijani. He's the guy that gave the order to start cracking down on those protesters and killing them in cold blood and piling up the bodies last month. He's still there, and he's trying to taunt our president. I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin B complex. This is very important if you're 40 years of age or older to take vitamin B complex. The first 4 B vitamins will help with the electron transport chain in your mitochondria, so you're increasing your ATP levels. That basically translates to you have more energy. Your cellular metabolism is going to increase with the vitamin B complex, and you're going to be protecting your neurons through vitamin B12. Clarity factor, very powerful neurostack. Gets rid of that brain fog, allows you to concentrate, and by taking this every day, you're going to improve the dendritic connections, so you're going to be thinking faster and have better memory. Super important to help improve your brain function. Get the clarity factor. Good night formula, super important to take at night, so you get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. It has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. So you get a good rest. You're going to be in those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep, so you're detoxifying your central nervous system, consolidating memory, and improving your energy levels. A lot of people don't realize that if you don't get a good sleep regularly, you are aging faster and your brain function will decline. So it's really important to get good sleep. Go to my store, get the Good Night Formula, and you can stack this. Get the Good Night Formula, get the Clarity Factor, and get the vitamin B complex, and this is a very powerful neurostack. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. Click the link in the description of this video and all my videos. Go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen into Let's listen into CNBC.
So long as we have this situation. Again, we can hope to resolve it through regime change or military force, but that's not a serious strategy. The real question is, how do we affect Iranian behavior? How do we put a ceiling on Iranian capabilities? What are we prepared to offer them in return? What about potentially the easing of sanctions and so forth? We're going to have to get serious about this as a strategic challenge. And up to now, we haven't been.
No.
Richard,
he's wrong. Richard Haas is wrong. The thing is that we need to destroy the military in Iran. We need to destroy their infrastructure, and we need to destroy the theocratic regime. And then we come in, Team America, and boot up a constitutional republic. You know why? It's going to work in Iran, and why it didn't work in Iraq and Afghanistan. Iran has an educated population that is very secular. That's why.
Well, two things. One, the idea that political change in Iran is imminent. I see no evidence of that. The idea that military operations would continue for months is a nightmare. It's a nightmare for energy prices, indirectly for fertilizer costs and food prices. It's a nightmare for anyone who wants to build a data center in the Gulf states.
Would you rather pay higher energy prices now or have a nuclear weapon detonated in 5 years, 10 years by Iran? I mean, it's so asinine. Take the pain now to get rid of a major threat to the world economy, to the world stability. Iran's theocratic regime is a cancer to modern society.
And it may not be popular politically, but when you're after a peace in the Middle East, and a once in a decade opportunity to try to achieve that and make the world a safer place, it feels like something we can tolerate a little bit.
That's the way we should.
If I thought there was a serious chance of quote unquote peace in the Middle East, whatever that means, I'd say, yeah, let's go for it. But I don't see the opportunity. And it's more than just the gas is going to cost you more.
See, this is the type of person, Richard Haas would be the type of person that says, let's not fight the Germans. Let's not fight the Japanese in World War II because we may have a problem with energy costs, or we may have rationing, or there may be too many people that sacrifice for their country. It's a wussy. Richard Haas is a wussy.
You've got to get serious, not about solving this problem, but putting a ceiling on it in a way that we can live with. Difficult choices, but we've got to start making them.
All right. Thank you for coming on and sharing your view, Richard. Always good to hear from you.
Thanks for having me.
Richard Haas, President Emeritus of Council on Foreign Relations.
All right, after the break, why a tried and true strategy for investing in memory stocks like Samsung and SanDisk is undergoing a big change. We're back in a moment.
It's a major problem with these people that are on the mainstream media. They're not. All they're doing is fuming the flame. They're not on Team America. They just. I don't want to have any pain. I don't want to have any sacrifice, personal sacrifice for the war effort. That's what they're saying. Where is the fortitude of being an American? What the hell? Shit. It pisses me off. Let's listen to General King.
Finance the old way. Finance the ramp way.
Now with an assessment of Operation Epic Fury, Fox News strategic analyst General Jack Keane is with us. General, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us. 5,000 major targets in a week and a half. You see what they're doing and the threats that the president has laid on anybody that goes near the Strait of Hormuz. two complete top levels of leadership eviscerated. What militarily, as you analyze this, I've never seen anything like it. I don't think anybody has. What does this mean?
Well, it's really quite significant in 10 days what's been accomplished here. And really what's happening, we've got these two proven, experienced militaries who've come together with shared values, shared interests, and a common objective here, working together in an air campaign that exceeds anything that we have done in decades. And look at, we operated with allies before. They were willing, and some of them didn't have much capability. And some others were willing, but they wanted to be in a non-combat area. They didn't want to be threatened too much. Or they were willing, but we had to provide air support, intelligence, and logistics support from them. Here come the Israelis. They are completely willing.
So Oscar is in the chat for the live stream on YouTube. And he states that that he doesn't condone any war. All right. Some wars you have to fight. Some wars it's virtuous to fight. Other wars are not. But not every war is the same. And the reality of the situation is there are righteous wars. All right. Secondly, he states that is death freedom or is freedom death? America is all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And oh, by the way, property rights through our constitutional republic. It's the land of the free and the home of the brave. And this country is great because there are many people that were brave to do the right thing, even though it meant short-term pain and self-sacrifice. And in many cases, the ultimate sacrifice. So the world that we live in today, the amount of prosperity that the United States citizen typically lives in is predicated on that bravery. So there are wars that are righteous.
And they have enormous capability themselves, and it's proven capability. They know how to fight, and they want to get into the fight. And we know why this is. They're fighting for their very survival. And they are a proven, capable organization. We have a 3-star general with a full staff inside the IDF headquarters. They have a 1-star general with a full staff inside the CENTCOM headquarters. The communication that goes on is considerable. And the trust and confidence that we have with each other is also quite exceptional in terms of what we have had in the past. And that is one of the reasons why the results in terms of the execution of the plan has been so stunning and remarkable. And nobody is exaggerating anything here. This is the facts that are on the table, and you've heard them presented here. The offensive operation is succeeding daily to strip away all of their offensive capability, ballistic missiles, and drones, and we're penetrating underneath the ground,
think about it.
sites.
There are over 5,000 targets that have been hit. All right. Just imagine if we allowed Iran to continue to build up, and not just that, because of this war being so righteous, we're using this as a test bed and a shot over the bow with China. Because believe me, the war with China is going to be a lot worse. So we're using this to test our different capabilities. And guess what? It's not just military hardware. It's also the training of our military staff and also the war planning. And with all of that experience that is built up, we will become a very lethal force against China.
Those missiles, take down those launchers, take down the transportation that moves them, take down the command and control. It is a systematic, deliberate approach to do it. And the same thing with the drones. And the proof is there. Objectively, the percentage of their ability to retaliate is down way over 90%. That is quite remarkable in itself. Defensively, Sean, we have been able to defend what they have been able to launch. They wanted to launch salvos of 25 and 50. Why? To overwhelm Israel's defenses and our own U.S. bases and our allies and partners in the region. They haven't been able to do that, only by an exception. 10 or 12, but normally 2 to 5. And that is well within our ability to handle it. And therefore, the penetration, in other words, what gets past the interceptors, is down in the single digits. It was 14% during the 12-day war, and in April, when Iran attacked Israel, it was up around 20%, which was totally unacceptable. So the fact that the casualties are light, and we certainly grieve and mourn and honor the 7 troops that we have lost and the others that are seriously wounded. And our heart goes out to their families. And with conviction, knowing what they sacrificed here, we are pursuing these objectives with deliberateness and vengeance to get this job done. But the reality is our casualties are very low. And it's because of the success of the offensive operation in taking down the means to attack, and also the success of our defensive operations in its ability to intercept it. It's true for us, it's true for our allies, and it's true for our allies in the region, and also for Israel, our partner in the fight. So yes, this operation is succeeding. 10 days in, how far do we have to go? It's based on the conditions. And that's what we mean. Based on the conditions of achieving those objectives will determine how long this takes. If you ask for an estimate in talking to our commanders about it, and I have, and the Israelis, we're talking a few more weeks to go on here. But that could change. It could be sooner based on our achievement, or it may take longer because other targets come up as opportunities for us, and we want to finish that job and make sure it's complete. That's the path we're on. Where is Iran in all of this? They got a new leader. And by selecting this leader, Sean, they have told the world that they're not going to make any changes whatsoever. This is a tyrannical, barbaric regime that is committed to its ideology to expand the Islamic Revolution throughout the region and throughout the world. And if they were able to survive this, they will try to recover their nuclear program, rebuild their ballistic missile program, support their proxies, and that's not going to happen. We're going to take all of that capability away from them. What do we see inside the regime? There are some cracks in the leadership in terms of feedback that intel services are getting. There are some morale problems in the security forces. There's huge amount of pressure that they feel. And the truth is, if you're a leader in this organization, you don't know if the fellow standing next to you is one of the informants that's working for the Mossad. Because the exquisite intelligence we get is not just from signals intelligence, our ability to listen, or our ability to see from surveillance and imagery. It comes from informants who give us valuable human intelligence. And so I'm not suggesting this is about the foe, but I am suggesting that there, as a result of 10 days of horror that has been brought to this regime, they are struggling and under pressure for sure. And it's going to get worse for them as the days go on.
As the Prime Minister said, as Kevin Corke reported, be ready. The moment is coming. As President Trump said in the beginning, this is a once-in-a-generation.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I want you to slow down the aging process, get healthy, so you can see a better tomorrow after we kick the shit out of Iran. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Structural Nano Silver Toothpaste. This Structural Nano Silver Toothpaste has no fluoride. Use this every day. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation at the gum line, neutralize. That's really important, especially during the cold season. And by having better oral hygiene, you're helping your cardiovascular health and your valvular health. A lot of people don't realize poor oral hygiene can cause cardiovascular disease. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Structural Nano Silver Toothpaste. Get a few tubes for your household. It's the best toothpaste that you can get. I also have Structural Nano Silver Gel. You can get the Structural Nano Silver Gel in the tube form or in the quick dispenser. Use them the same way. If you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, put the gel on the wound. It will help to heal it quicker. You can apply the gel on your skin daily as the skincare, topical skincare. And if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, especially during the cold season, all right, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. You can't do that with Perel. Please go to my store and get the dual purpose structural nano silver gel, either in the quick dispenser or in the tube form. Make sure you stock up at home. All right, be prepared, because you never know when you need it. But again, you can use that gel daily for skincare. I have Max 35, Max 14, and Cleanse. Cleanse is 30 parts per million, Max 35 is 35 parts per million, and Max 14 is 14 parts per million. They're at different price points, but you take it the same way, and what it'll do is help to boost up your immune system. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and swallow. What this will do is neutralize and improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, help to maintain your mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells in your oral pharynx. Super important to help to boost up that innate immune system. Now, if you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day, swish in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds or so, and then swallow it, right? You want to keep that oral cavity and that oral pharynx cleansed and neutralized, and by doing that, you're boosting up your immune system. So please go to my store, get the Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse. Use discount 5, and you get $5 off any order.
That's the Trump plan, by the way. He says, if necessary, because the risk is so high, have the U.S. Navy escort commercial ships.
Absolutely. So that plan has its own risk strategy that is embedded in it, because the moment you put American sailors on the line, right now the Americans are operating from a safe distance. They're not in the Strait of Hormuz. Their ships are miles away from the Iranian coastline. But if they are accompanying them, as many military analysts, and I was talking to some people earlier on about, what could be the Iranian strategy. And if the Iranians decide that what they're doing on these oil facilities, they start doing in the seas where there is a multiple drone attack, which is followed by a missile, it could render these defenses absolutely paralyze them. And that is why I think you haven't seen any naval ship. They was very quickly denied by the U.S. Secretary of Energy yesterday that when they said there was a ship that was accompanied, and they said, no, we didn't do it.
Yeah, they had
and
to retract that statement.
Exactly, and that is the reason, because this essentially puts American soldiers in the line of fire, which the Trump administration so far has not been able to do. But again, the Iranians want to tell the Americans and the rest of the world they still have the capability to create disruptions. They're not going for domination. They're going to continue to disrupt naval ship supplies. They're going to disrupt air routes.
We're going to go to CNN here.
Life.
New images near the Strait of Hormuz off Iran, where new attacks are now sending oil prices on another wild ride today. This is a Thai flagged ship, one of at least 3 vessels that have been struck today in that critical waterway. Thailand's Ministry of Transport says 20 crew members have been rescued. 3, though, remain unaccounted for. I'm going to show you a map of the approximate locations of these attacks on ships today in the Strait. A reminder, some 20 million barrels of fuel a day move through this critical shipping route, and it is clearly effectively remains shut down because of this very real threat. Let's get right to Paula Hancock's live in Abu Dhabi for the latest on this. What are you hearing here?
Okay, we just heard from the UN, the UK Maritime Agency, and they say that as of now, they believe that about 13 vessels have been impacted since this war started. Now, you mentioned that Thai flagged ship. We have some more information on that as well from authorities. They said that there was an explosion at the stern and then a fire broke out in the engine room. Now, this is believed to be where those 3 missing sailors were on duty at the time. So 20 rescued by the Omani Navy. We know that the captain told the crew to evacuate. They got in lifeboats and were then saved, but 3 still missing at this point. So it is a great concern that Iran appears to be ratcheting up these attacks on vessels in the Strait of Hormuz and in these very critical waters. Now, one of the vessels we understand was a cargo vessel, so we're not just talking about the restrictions of oil getting to where it needs to here. There's a lot more that there are concerns of. Now, a quick look at what else has been happening. Since Iran has said that it's going to have its most intense and heaviest operation, we do appear to be seeing a fairly consistent retaliation across the Gulf nations. Here in the UAE, we have been hearing a number of different waves of interceptions. Dubai Airport, there were 2 drones that hit nearby. We understand that 4 people have been injured there, authorities saying in the vicinity of Dubai Airport that fell. Flights have started to take off again now, though. We also know that in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, they have also seen interceptions and alerts over the past 24 hours. And Iran has also expanded, if you like, its target list. We are hearing from Iranian officials through state media that they say now offices and assets of major American tech companies with operations in the region would be considered a legitimate target. Now, clearly, there are many in this Gulf region. We also had an interesting quote I want to bring to you from the Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesperson saying that from day one they had warned that this could be the potential fallout of any military action in Iran. He said, quote, "This is the biggest I told you so in the history of I told you so's in the world." Clearly, there is frustration and anger among leaders in this region. Okay.
Very clearly. Paula Hancock, thank you so much, Paul, for bringing us all of those new headlines. I really appreciate it.
The geography is extremely well known and understood, and that's because of that the risks currently being faced are so severe. Take, for example, Maersk Shipping, which has got at least 10 ships that it says stranded in the northern part of the Strait of Hormuz, and many more on the outside that it can't get in or out because obviously the waterway is so difficult. In addition, they are refusing to send now ships up through into the Red Sea because of the possibilities of the Houthis and the risks around Yemen. As a result, something like Maersk is saying the current situation is absolutely uncharted.
And the whole reason why, listen to DrPaulCottrell give you some truth here, all right? The whole reason why we're having this problem around the straits and around, the peninsulas in the Middle East is because we allowed for Islamic terror to take hold. And we had many presidents, including President 45, Trump 1.0, not willing to kick ass. Well, if we had presidents that weren't so chicken shit, including Reagan, we wouldn't have this problem.
Some of the hubs on which global trade does rely on are actually being affected, are being closed by the situation right now. It's true from Jebel Ali, it's true for Abu Dhabi, it's true for a few of those hubs, and this is going to create ripple effect, I think, for a while, as we need to see how this is going to sort itself out. In the short run, we can manage this, but if this was to endure, this would create, I think, serious congestions and serious issues across the global supply chain.
What happens next is anybody's guess. The very idea that this area is being mined by the Iranians, or indeed that the US is going in and starting to attack those various rubber dinghies and ships that's doing the mines, it's simply unheard of and frankly, we don't know how it will develop. The only thing we can say with any degree of certainty is that as long as that waterway remains closed, then the price of oil just keeps rising. Richard West, CNN, London.
With us now, CNN national security analyst Beth Sanner, and with us, CNN military analyst, retired Colonel Cedric Leighton. And Beth, I just want to start with the latest news from what we've been seeing inside the Strait of Hormuz. This is one of the cargo vessels that's been hit. This is a new image we're getting in. Yeah. You can see the smoke coming out of that. It is one of 3 vessels hit, 1, 2, 3 over the last 12 hours or so. So what does this tell you?
This is like tanker
If the
wars.
Iranians are doing this to ships in this key shipping lane, what does it tell you about what they're capable of and what their plans are?
So what we're seeing now, so we started off with this idea yesterday that they were going to start putting mines in. And I think that we have to understand here that mines are part of a system, right? So it's mines, drones, rockets, missiles, right? And so in this very small area, and the only place that you can pass here is really only 2 miles, not 20 miles. And so when you have this much concentration, what the Iranians are telling us is like, we're in, right? This is now, they have made a decision that they are shutting their own access here by laying these mines. They're shutting themselves in, essentially, and it's worth it for them. So they're all in now.
One of the things that have been saying in the papers this morning is the Iranians are showing they have a vote in all of this. And just to give you one more sense of what this is, them shutting down the waterway, you can see ships here on one end of the strait, ships here on one end of the strait, but by and large, this area here, this most narrow area, 20 miles wide, but the shipping lane itself really just 2 miles, that all but empty. Cedric, I want to go to you with one other development overnight. This is inside Iraq, right? Inside Iraq, a key U.S. diplomatic support center was struck overnight. I'll put well, it was right here. You can see it right here. What, again, does that tell you about what the Iranians have in mind and what they're still capable of?
Yeah, so John, good morning.
I gamla dagar så hade vi inte några alkoholistare och många som skadade sig, ryggen, skulder, hela kroppen då. Och vi hade många som var.
Yeah, so John, good morning. What they're doing is they're actually looking at all the different important target sets. They've had a real opportunity to, in essence, case all these targets. They know exactly where our diplomatic facilities are. They know where some of our CIA facilities are. They know where our military facilities are. And the reason they're doing this is their way asymmetrically of going after us. On the one hand, we measure things like number of aircraft taken out. We measure things like number of vessels taken out and how many we put to the bottom of the Persian Gulf. That's all great. But the problem is the Iranians are fighting with other means. And as Beth was pointing out, they are using things like drones, missiles, and mines to take that asymmetric effort forward. And in some cases, they have an asymmetric advantage. And so going after, areas like logistics centers like they did in Kuwait, going after Bin Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, and going after that diplomatic support center in Baghdad is exactly part of the Iranian playbook.
And as they try to show, go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, so what I want to add to that, and I think, Cedric, you can jump in and disagree if I'm wrong here, but I mean, it's very, very likely that this was done by Iranian-backed militias that are Iraqis, right? We have not seen them join the fight. We have Hezbollah committing suicide in Lebanon, literally, because, Israel is beating the crap out of them. And now we have Iraq joining in. Are we going to have Yemen join in? Are we going to have the Houthis join into this fight, which would, move us to the Red Sea? They haven't done that yet because it's not exactly in their interest right now to draw fire. They're kind of on their back heels right now domestically. But this is, again, an expansion of the war that we were kind of waiting for. It hasn't happened, but maybe this is it.
Cedric, when we go back to the Straits, Go ahead, Cedric. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. What I was going to say is that, yeah, Beth is right. And I think we need to look at the possibility that the Houthis will get involved at some point in time. And that would then mean that two different choke points, the Persian Gulf choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Bab el-Mandeb, who is the Red Sea empties into the Indian Ocean. That is the kind of area that we actually could see some efforts. And that is something where the proxies, just like Beth said in Iraq, the proxies are going to play a role in this, and this is, definitely an expansion of the effort. And the Iranians are controlling that narrative along with their proxies, of course.
Yeah, just so you can see what we're talking about regionally. This is the Strait of Hormuz. This would be the Red Sea right here. The Houthis operating right here, perhaps shutting down some of the shipping in and out of that region. One other thing, we were talking about the mines, right? The idea, CNN was reporting that that Iran may be laying mines in the Red Sea. Then CENTCOM, in the Strait of Hormuz. Then CENTCOM released this video. They say is of U.S. warplanes and missiles striking the Iranian mine-laying ships. Is this enough to disable them? I think the Iranians have 5,000 mines that they could use. Would this be enough to stop efforts to mine?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it helps. But I mean, we're talking about a 1,000-mile coastline, and we're talking about a capacity of Iran to use all manner of ships, dhows, things that look like fishing ships. Yeah, you can't do that at scale, but you can certainly throw one or two over the back of the boat, and no one will know that. It's very, very hard to track down these very small vessels that can lay mines. So I think it's kind of whack-a-mole, and we've only whacked, one mole. I mean, it's not a lot.
Just so people say, it's 1,000 miles of coastline here. This is all Iran.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's important to get the lozenges and the drops for the cold season and the allergy season. You want to mitigate any throat irritation right away. I have vitamin C orange splash lozenges and Manuka honey in stock. Please go to my store, get a few bags for your household. I also have the drops in blueberry, in cherry flavor, and also in honey and lemon. So please go to my store, get the drops and the lozenges, stock up for work and at home. Be prepared. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's see here. I want to see. Let's listen into live now.
I'm Admiral Brad Cooper here at United States Central Command, where I'm leading the forces executing Operation Epic Fury. First, I want you to know that we continue to keep the families of our fallen heroes and our wounded teammates in our thoughts and prayers. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the families of the 50,000 American servicemen and women deployed in and around the Middle East. I am grateful for your selfless sacrifice, and I know that Americans across the country hold you in their hearts. Let me start by offering my overall assessment of Operation Epic Fury. In short, U.S. forces continue delivering devastating combat power against the Iranian regime. I've said this before, but it bears repeating. U.S. combat power is building, Iranian combat power is declining. And we remain centered on very clear military objectives in eliminating Iran's ability to project power against Americans and against its neighbors. Every day, we're striking hard at Iranian ballistic missiles and drones. To date, we have struck more than 5,500 targets inside Iran, including more than 60 ships using a variety of precision weapon systems. Just yesterday, we had strike waves nearly every hour from different locations and directions going into Iran. We also took out the last of 4 Soleimani-class warships. That's an entire class of Iranian ships now out of the fight. I characterize our strikes as being unpredictable, dynamic, and decisive. Since the first 24 hours of this campaign, Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks have dropped drastically. But it's worth pointing out that Iranian forces continue to deliberately target innocent civilians in Gulf countries while hiding behind their own people as they launch attacks from highly populated cities in Iran. Of course, Forces executing Operation Epic Fury aren't just defending against Iranian threats. We are methodically dismantling them by hitting Iranian missiles and drones, as we also strike their defense industrial base. Just last night, our bomber force hit a large ballistic missile manufacturing facility, as an example. So it's not just about what's shooting at us today, it's also about eliminating the threat in the future. Now, let me show you a few of the results from the tremendous efforts by America's joint force. Here, you see an Iranian Jamran-class warship, a large patrol ship, a drone smuggling vessel, and 4 other surface combatants docked at Chabahar port in the Gulf of Oman the day before we launched Operation Epic Fury. Here's the same pier 4 days later, all ships taken out of action. This Bayandar-class surface ship was hit and rolled on its side. Here's another example. Here you see 2 Iranian surface combatants docked at an Iranian naval base near the Strait of Hormuz, just hours into the campaign. And here's what they look like 3 days later, engulfed in flames after we struck them with a precision weapon. For years, the Iranian regime has threatened commercial shipping and U.S. forces in international waters. Our mission is to end their ability to project power and harass shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. From the air, we've achieved a concentration of air power with back-to-back waves of advanced fighters creating constant pressure on the enemy every single day. Our dominance is not a solo effort, it's a testament to the strength of our ironclad alliances. We continue to coordinate closely and effectively with Israel in this very large operation, and we are also coordinating and serving side by side with all of our partners in the Middle East. We're on a path to eliminating Iran's ability to threaten Americans and our friends, and we're achieving this through a combination of lethality, precision, and rapid innovation. Let me highlight a few examples, at least the ones that aren't classified, of how we are achieving lethal effects in entirely new ways. First, our warfighters are leveraging a variety of advanced AI tools. These systems help us sift through vast amounts of data in seconds, so our leaders can cut through the noise and make smarter decisions faster than the enemy can react. Humans will always make final decisions on what to shoot and what not to shoot, and when to shoot, but advanced AI tools can turn processes that used to take hours and sometimes even days into seconds. I continue to be impressed with all the branches of the U.S. military. The entire team is performing superbly. Strike operations from our joint force continue, as I said. I assess that we are clearly exercising air superiority over vast swaths of Iran. We have the most integrated air defense umbrella in the Middle East, and our defensive operations from the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Space Force teams are performing magnificently. A note about the Space Force. Our space superiority has been a critical enabler to this fight. Unseen by the world, the Space Force is doing 2 things. First, they're degrading Iranian capability, and second, they're helping to protect American forces. And I'll have to leave it right there. All told, despite this incredible progress, make no mistake, we remain highly vigilant. And I just could not be prouder of our Operation Epic Fury team, and I know the American people share that same pride. To all our warriors out there, please keep up the great work and Godspeed. Thanks so much.
All right, let's listen into, I want to listen into, let's see here, let's see live, let's see France 24, what they have to say.
France 24, your economy explained. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
They're on the weather right now. It's live now. Oh.
All right, looks like we caught the tail end into the afternoon. A lot of discussion there about the shutdown as well as the latest on the conflict with Iran. What I want to do, we missed Senator John Thune speaking a little bit earlier. That was maybe 30 minutes ago.
Natural gas is trading at 3.15, so it's been going up. And oil is now past the 87 handle for the, or it's at 87.10 right now. So energy is up. Gush is trading at 35.38. All right. Let's listen into this live now.
More of these developments out in the Middle East. I want to bring us out to this. It's a social media post courtesy of U.S. Central Command. It says this, that U.S. forces eliminated multiple Iranian naval vessels March 10th, including 16 mine layers near the Strait of Hormuz. Joining us next to talk more about these developments is Fox News' Rebecca Castor. She is live for us there down in Capitol Hill. Now, Rebecca, what is the Trump administration saying about these attacks against Iranian naval vessels?
Carl, good morning. Well, that post from U.S. Central Command is just one of many signs that the next phase of this war is going to be fought at sea. The Strait of Hormuz is what everybody is watching. It's a critical waterway where about 20% of the world's oil supply flows daily. And the Iranians have threatened to target any ship that attempts to pass. And they claimed they laid mines in the water to blow them up. President Trump says the U.S. has no reports that they actually did that, but he warned on social media if the mines were placed, they need to be removed immediately, or military consequences to Iran will be at a level never seen.
I was just showing here, Rebecca, some of that video that was released by CENTCOM, but I do also want to talk about another cargo ship that was hit apparently in the Strait of Hormuz this morning. So what do we know about that situation?
Yeah, according to maritime officials in the United Kingdom, a cargo ship was hit by a projectile early this morning while crossing the strait. It caused a fire on board, and we know the crew had to evacuate. This is the 13th report those UK officials have gotten of an attack in the strait or near the Strait of Hormuz since Operation Epic Fury began. Iran hasn't yet claimed responsibility for a lot of those attacks, but this is exactly what ship captains are afraid of right now and why hundreds of vessels are basically at a standstill in the region. They don't want to take the risk. So if this attack was done by Iran, they're clearly not listening to the president's threats, and this could further escalate tensions.
And then finally here, Rebecca, I see that you are joining us there again from our nation's capital in the U.S. Just yesterday, lawmakers got yet another classified briefing on these strikes in the Middle East and Operation Epic Fury. So what have lawmakers learned, and what can we know in the public?
Well, they are sharing very little of the classified information, of course, and Democrats say they still don't have the answers they need to believe that this war is in Americans' best interest. Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut says he's become increasingly concerned that U.S. ground troops will be sent into Iran. And then Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren told us that she thinks the U.S. is basically spending too much money and has other priorities that, you know, these millions of dollars that we're spending on this war could go to instead. Democrats are also demanding Trump officials hold public hearings on the mission so Americans can have all of the facts. We'll see if that comes about.
Right, Rebecca Castor with Fox News joining us from Washington, D.C. Rebecca, thank you so much for that update. We'll check in soon. We are going to continue to follow any and all new developments and details regarding the situation in the Middle East. And I want to bring us out to some more social media posts here. This next one, courtesy of the Associated Press, saying that breaking, a projectile hit a cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz, setting the vessel ablaze after the United States targeted Iranian mine-laying vessels that could target the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf. Now, this is just one of the points that Rebecca spoke about in that latest reporting. And again, lawmakers will be on Capitol Hill throughout the day today. So we'll see what more comments they have to say on this situation in the Middle East, and if they possibly get another update from the Trump administration.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. This is a very effective way to improve your skin, your hair, your nails, your musculature, your bone density, even your joint health. It's a month's supply. Take it every day. Now, you can take it separately, or you can stack it with some of the other products that I have here. Collagen is something that you would take daily. Take it underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. But this will help to remodel your joints. Very effective with just aging joints or joints where you have damaged during a sport or injured the joint during a sport. But taking collagen will help to remodel the joint by recruiting and using type 2 collagen and ACAN. ACAN helps with the cushioning of the joint, and collagen 2, type 2, helps with the remodeling of the cartilage. Collagen also helps to block the erosion of the joint by blocking two types of enzymes, MMP3 and MMP13, and blocking the pain by blocking EP4. Also, collagen helps to utilize glucosamine to remodel the cartilage and allows the usage of chondroitin to help with the cushioning of the joint. This is very effective to help to remodel and reduce that pain and that inflammation. Super important. Now, what I recommend is that you take the collagen and you slowly work the joint through some stretches. Not if you have an injury or you have arthritis in that joint, you want to do some stretches related to that joint, and you want to do a little bit of resistance training, light resistance training. Take the collagen and then slowly rebuild that joint, all right, and improve the musculature and stretching out those tendons and ligaments, right? So let's say you have an elbow, problem, all right? You have some sort of arthritis in your elbow. What you want to do is that if you have some sort of movement where you start feeling wherever the movement is, either flexing or extension, but wherever that pain starts, right, you want to go a little bit more. So let's say if you're flex and it's painful doing flexing, right? So let's say that you have no pain this way, and then the pain starts this up to this point. You want to go a little bit more and count to 10 seconds or 20 seconds, and then release. All right, and what you're slowly doing is you're slowly working that joint, and then eventually get to the point where you can lift some weight up to that painful level, and then release. Right, so you want to do stretches, and you want to work that joint slowly, and eventually you'll get to the point where you'll be able to fully flex or fully extend, depending on the problem and what joint you're dealing with. But the point here is that you want to do some exercises, right? And you want to take the collagen, and this will help to remodel. Now, you can stack it with the collagen for added benefits, all right? But this is really powerful, and by taking the collagen, you'll have the amino acid profile and the ingredients to help with remodeling the joint. Now, for pain relief, you can also take super strong relief. Now, this is dual purpose. If you have a sore muscles from a workout, or you pulled a muscle, if you have a headache, or if you have joint pain, apply it on your skin where that pain is. That pain will be reduced or eliminated within 30 to 60 seconds. All right? It's temporary relief, but this gives you the relief that you need to reduce that pain. Now, again, if it's joint related, either because of osteoarthritis or some sort of sports injury, you want to remodel that joint, and you need to do some stretches slowly. You build up the strength of that joint, and you're stretching it out slowly over time, and it'll get better. And you want to take the collagen every day to help to remodel and reduce the erosion, right? And taking the collagen will help to also give you the amino acids that you need to help rebuild that joint. So please go to my store, get the collagen, and the super strong relief. You can take them separately, but if you have joint pain, taking all three together is actually going to help you. With that, let's continue. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen into MS Now about Russia very clearly is helping Iran.
Josh Einiger in Dubai, also with us, a pair of seasoned diplomats. MS Now International Affairs Analyst, former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, and former U.S. Ambassador to the UAE, and former Assistant Secretary of State Barbara Leaf. Josh, a string of new attacks impacting the Strait of Hormuz and the global oil squeeze. What's the latest?
Well, the latest on at 6 p.m. now on this evening in this sprawling city, and it's once again on edge. People, not where I am here, but people have been reporting hearing intercepts in the skies over parts of Dubai as this, air campaign continues to ramp up. Iran, however, has been seeming to be much more intentional about targeting specific infrastructure, critical infrastructure, especially around the Strait of Hormuz. You mentioned the lining of the strait with mines. They, right now, in the last couple of hours, have targeted not one, not two, but three individual cargo ships on one side or the other of the Strait of Hormuz. One of them was on fire. The crew had to abandon ship. Now, there are backup plans to using the strait, which controls or is the conduit for 20% of the world's crude oil. There is a pipeline here across the United Arab Emirates that was designed specifically to be able to bypass the strait. And it connects the region's largest oil refinery, which is west of Abu Dhabi, with a huge oil farm in the city of Fujairah, which is on the Gulf of Oman. It allows ships to come and pick up oil from that location and bypass the Strait of Hormuz. In the last 3 days, there have been attacks by Iran on both ends of that pipeline. The oil refinery was attacked yesterday. It has been taken offline by the government. And the oil farm at the end of the line on the Gulf of Oman had been attacked a couple of days before. It's not clear the extent of the damage, although, as I said, that oil refinery, which produces almost 1 million barrels of crude every day, has been taken offline. There is a second pipeline that crosses Saudi Arabia that has also been waiting for actually decades in that case to be needed in the event of a situation like this in the Strait of Hormuz. That takes the oil to the Red Sea, where obviously we've seen in the last couple of years with Iran-backed Houthi rebels, all kinds of issues on that waterway. So not a lot of great options for the oil industry as it watches the supply of oil globally become quite concerning and the prices skyrocket.
Josh, is there any more insight into this floated U.S. plan to escort ships through the strait?
So there's no...
On the PGA Tour, I trust only one caddy. On my lawn, I trust only one pro. It's me, right? Yeah.
Trust the pros trust.
True. So there's been a lot of talk about that, Anna, but obviously that has not been happening. I've spoken the last couple of days with a variety of shipping executives and experts in this region who say that it really isn't all that practical. In one reason, a U.S. frigate might not necessarily be able to protect a tanker against a swarm of drones any more than anybody else would. Then you've got insurance issues. Insurance companies would not necessarily be willing to insure voyages across the strait until they know it's safe, especially if there are mines in the strait. Then you got the crews. These are human beings who work for a living, who would have to put themselves in grave danger and might not be willing to do that. So really, it seems unlikely that there's going to be any movement through the strait, even if the U.S. military were willing to escort some of these ships.
Josh Einiger, thank you for that reporting. Now, Ambassador Leaf, Iran has lashed out at its neighbors, is now apparently trying to lay mines in the Strait of Hormuz. The New York Times reports that the Trump administration has been caught off guard by the scale of the retaliation, reporting some military advisors did warn before the war that Iran could launch an aggressive campaign in response and would view the U.S.-Israeli attack as a threat to its existence. But other advisors remain confident that killing Iran's senior leadership would lead to more pragmatic leaders taking over who might bring an end to the war. What's your view? Was Tehran's response predictable, or did the White House underestimate what they'd be facing?
I think unfortunately, tragically, it's a mix of both. Look, everything that Iran has done to date has been predictable. They've talked about it for years, but especially on the back end of the June 12-day war, they began to prepare for exactly this sort of round two of the conflict that they saw, very unfinished with Israel and indeed with the U.S. So taking hostage, in a sense, the Gulf and through it, the international economy was entirely predictable, and it's very difficult to defend against.
Ambassador McFaul, President Trump spoke to Vladimir Putin on Monday after reporting by MS Now and others that Russia's providing intel to help Iran in this battle. Trump envoy Steve Witkoff was on that call, and here's what he said after.
I can tell you that yesterday on the call with the president, the Russians said that they have not been sharing. That's what they said. So, you know, we can take them at their word, but they did say that. And yesterday morning, independently, Jared and I had a call with Ushakov, who reiterated the same.
We can take them at their word. Do you buy that?
Of course not. Vladimir Putin's been lying his entire career. The idea that anybody in the U.S. government would take his word, or Mr. Ushakov, the person he identified, the Putin's foreign policy advisor, somebody I used to deal with on a daily basis when I worked in Moscow, at their word, it's insane. Doesn't he have intelligence? I assume Mr. Witkoff has the same briefings that the rest of the U.S. government has that leak the intelligence about the Russian support for Iran, and that he didn't comment on that. But third, why is he on TV talking about this? What U.S. interest is advanced by the clip that you just played? What I see is a government that doesn't know what it's doing, has not figured out what the purpose of this war is, changes it every day, and is playing defense now on something where Russia very clearly is helping our enemy in this war, yet they're afraid to tell the truth about that because they seem quite confused about the entire purpose of this military operation, this war.
A string of headlines is declaring Russia as the big winner of this war so far. Given everything we're seeing with the oil markets and in the Strait of Hormuz, how do you see it?
So I think it's mixed. On the one hand, we see yet again, like in Syria, like in Venezuela, that Russia does not come to the aid of its allies and partners like Iran. So that, in that sense, I think is good news for us. Number two, whatever the political decision was to go to war, the execution of the plan by our armed forces has been extraordinary. That's a signal both to Moscow and Beijing about our capabilities. But in the short term, yes, oil prices have skyrocketed. That means Putin has more money to fight his war in Ukraine. And Russian oil doesn't go through the Strait of Hormuz that you've been talking about. They have other ways to do it. Therefore, in the short term, they benefited. But in the long term, they also benefit from the narrative around the world. For many years, we, the United States, the Biden administration most certainly, has been talking about the illegitimate war that Putin launched without
provocation vis-a-vis Ukraine. Now we have a much more complicated argument to try to explain why our war in Iran is legitimate for the rest of the world, but somehow Putin's war in Ukraine is illegitimate. Now, I believe that. I believe that sincerely, but it's a very hard argument to make, and we're losing public opinion around the world about the legitimate use of American power right now.
Ambassador Leaf, I also want to revisit what Witkoff said about Iran's nuclear program yesterday. Let's watch.
Think about what this...
Something's different. I'm changing.
Think about what this world would look like if you didn't have Donald Trump as the president. Because in a year, if you had someone who didn't have the courage to do this action, you'd have 30 or 40 nuclear bombs. And what would the world look like there?
Is that claim grounded in reality? And what do you make
They had
of Witkoff's
60% uranium enrichment. Of course they could have.
I mean, I have to go back to something really critical that Ambassador Paul has laid out, which is the administration failing consistently to answer 4 questions: the why, the what, the how, the when, to the American people, but also to the partners who are on the front line receiving all these missiles and drone attacks, as well as partners in Asia, Europe, and finally the enemy is listening to all of this. So, you know, why now? What would
They had 60% enrichment of uranium. You do not need that for civilian use. That's only for building up a stockpile for potential breakout. That's the only reason you'd have that. There's no other reason to have that much at that level of enrichment.
rich uranium buried somewhere in Iran, and we are highly unlikely to get at those quantities of nearly weapons-grade uranium through military strikes. So I really, what's missing here at the front end was a sustained and serious diplomatic negotiating effort. And I have to say, I don't think the administration was serious at all on that front.
Let's see what else is going on in the news. All right, this is DW.
Are the United States and Israel about to send ground troops into Iran? After days of intense airstrikes, there's growing talk about what happens next. Could it be boots on the ground? It's a question President Trump answered like this.
I don't even want to talk about it now, man. I don't think it's an appropriate question. You know, I'm not going to answer it. Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. I mean, have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level.
So what options are being considered and how likely are they?
We should look at the characteristics of the country. Iran is a very vast and large country. So because of this, if they want to go after regime change, or if the US and Israel decide to eliminate and eradicate the Islamic Republic as a political system, this means that if we exclude the role of the people coming to the streets, they have to bring something between 800,000 to 1,200,000 soldiers to Iran in order to make sure they can eradicate the Islamic Republic. That's a number that I don't think is coming anytime soon, or that's something that I believe is not possible. What is possible instead is a limited operation on ground by special forces.
That's Shahin Madaris. He's a Middle East analyst, born in Tehran and director of the Iran team at the International Team for the Study of Security. He believes there are two potential scenarios for the involvement of special forces on the ground.
One of them is to retrieve over 400 kilograms of 60% purified uranium that the Islamic Republic still possess. And the other one is the probable elimination of the new supreme leader, the son of the past supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei. In both cases, we might be witnessing an airborne operation to pave the way for the special forces to enter.
Madaris warns that elements of Iran's military are likely to take cover among civilian infrastructure, and any US or Israeli airstrikes on those sites could come at a high cost to civilians.
Well, what they can do is actually quite sophisticated, because from the intelligence and the intel we have been receiving, it is now clear that some of the politicians and some of the responsibles of the Islamic Republic are now hiding out inside the hospitals in different cities. This is something that cannot be dealt with drones and bombs or missiles, because the number of civilian casualties will be quite high. These are the instances and the cases that usage of the special forces can be justified.
But even if it's just a limited force of elite troops on the ground, whether American, Israeli, or both, the stakes are still extremely high.
Sending in the special forces will have the same threats that they have been facing during each and every operation for which they have been prepared for. But in the Iranian case, it could be a little more complicated, because the Islamic Republic has a long experience in bringing the war into the cities and into urban warfare. If you look at the precedent of the Islamic Republic, in particularly the last 2 decades, is that they have been trying to take hostages, even from citizens with dual citizenship, in order to put their governments under pressure, particularly the European government and the United States government. And well, it's quite imaginable that they would do such a thing with the special forces in case they are captured. And in case they are captured, the sad thing is that the Islamic Republic is not going to treat them based on the Geneva Convention regarding the POWs.
The danger isn't just for the US and Israel. Iran's military would be stepping into a confrontation for which it is potentially not prepared. As Shahin Madaris puts it, they're nowhere near the level of their opponents.
Well, regarding the ground troops, the equation completely changes, because then we're talking about quantity over quality, because the Islamic Republic's ground troops might be high in number, but the lack of training and the lack of them being armed with new and recent technological weapons makes them quite vulnerable and makes them weak. This is going on why they have the number, but the American and probably the Israeli special forces or the airborne troops will be less, but they will be more enhanced and more efficient dealing with these troops.
At this point, we also need to talk about the Kurds. Now, they have deep-seated historical grievances against Tehran, but will they get involved?
Well, so far what we know is that President Trump made a statement saying that he appreciates and it is great if the Kurds decide to intervene if they want. And 2 days after that, he made another statement saying that the entrance of the Kurds in this equation can complicate things. They are ready to go in, but I have asked them not to. And this is what President Trump has said so far. On the other hand, the Turkish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hakan Fidan, said that Secretary of State Marco Rubio already assured him that the Kurds are not going in, because this is also quite an important matter for Turkey. But when we look at the other side, we can see that President Trump made phone calls to the Iraq's Kurdistan's Kurdish leaders, already spoke with them, and as we know, some of the Kurdish leaders are currently in Washington, D.C., so it is still too soon to say what can happen, but what we know is that the Kurds are the only systematically ready, armed groups to go inside the country and fight against the Islamic Republic. And it is also quite important not to fall to the propaganda of the Islamic Republic, calling them separatists trying to annex a part of Iran.
So what are the warning signs we should be watching? The indications that this could be moving towards the deployment of ground troops inside Iran.
Choosing Mojtaba Khamenei as the next supreme leader of Iran means that the Islamic Republic is not still letting go of the political will to revive the nuclear program, the ballistic missile program, and the proxy groups within the Middle East region. So this means that the attacks will continue against the Islamic Republic, and they will try to eliminate the new supreme leader as well. It's quite important to observe and hermeneutically analyze the first speech that this new supreme leader is going to make to understand what are going to be the core targets and the core lines that they are going to follow regarding the future policies of the Islamic Republic. That could be a sign for us.
Well, that's all for now. DW News is covering this breaking news story, giving you the latest and
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol helps to boost up your energy levels. It soaks up free radicals, helps the health of the mitochondria, so you'll produce more ATP, so you have more energy at the cellular level. Resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression and helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. This is really important to slow down the aging process and to improve your skin. Resveratrol helps the basal layer of your skin so the new skin cells that are produced are healthier. This stacks really well with C60. Also, get zeolite. Zeolite will help to detoxify your body. It helps to detoxify heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. When you detoxify your body regularly, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system, but you're also helping with brain function. Now, zeolite, you just take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, do that every day, and you're detoxifying your body. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. Probiotics, super important. You can get 2 types of probiotics from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The one that I have in my hand is the veggie cap version. I also have a powdered version on my store. If you prefer to take the powdered version, please go to my store and get the probiotics. Now, good gut biome will help many different organ systems. It helps with brain because it'll allow you to get rid of that brain fog. Also, it'll help to improve your sleep. A lot of people don't realize that better sleep also can happen when you have a better gut biome. Your metabolism will be better. You'll be able to absorb your nutrients better. And your immune system at the gut level will improve. So please make sure you take a probiotic. Go to my store, get the veggie cap version or the powdered version. Digestive enzyme complex helps to reduce the load on your pancreas. This will help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids so you're processing your food properly and absorbing your nutrients. This has bromelain in it, so it's fibrinolytic, and it has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins. That's super important, especially when we went through the crisis of 2020. So take my advice, reduce the load on your pancreas, break up those carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids by taking the digestive enzyme complex. This is super important to take every day if you're 40 years of age or older. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll also benefit by taking digestive enzyme complex to help to break up your pre or post-workout fuel source. And lastly, vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium, and it will help when you do resistance training to build bone density. Vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor to help cells work properly. Vitamin D3 also helps cardiovascular health. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3, if a cell is infected, it will help for that cell to go into apoptosis. So that's also important, especially during the cold season. All right, with that, let's listen to Al Jazeera.
day 12 of the war, while the American and Israeli strikes continue, people have gathered here at Envelope Square to take part in the funeral of some of the military commanders of the country. Among them are four of the country's highest-ranking figures. Abdurrahim Sari, the chief of the staff of Iran's armed forces, Mohammad Cottrell, the IRGC commander-in-chief, Ali Shamkhani, the Secretary of Defense Council, and the longtime figure in Iran's national security establishment, and Aziz Nasirzadeh, the country's defense minister. They were killed on the first day of the strikes, which targeted the office of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was himself killed in that attack. But the blow does not stop with these high-profile losses. The strike have also targeted military command centers, barracks,
I would definitely
naval vessels, and other parts of Iran's defense infrastructure. In response, and despite these setbacks, Iran's armed forces have delivered a strong message of defiance and deterrence, launching retaliatory attacks on Israeli territories and on U.S. bases across the region.
We will take revenge for the blood of these martyrs. We can't sit quietly and watch what they want to do to us. Whatever they do, we'll respond even more strongly.
The path the region's on must change. Conditions must be such that the shadow of war is no longer over us, so that we can live our lives. The region should move forward in the way we believe it should, and we'll stand firmly on that path. We'll stand firm. Death to America, death to Israel.
We're not afraid. We don't fear. As long as we're alive, we stand behind the revolution.
These are our dear ones and the best among us. I hope we'll be able to continue their path, and God willing it won't happen again, and that we will teach the enemy a lesson so that such martyrdom will not be repeated.
The public mood here is marked by a strong sense of resistance. For many people here, as the war goes on, the funeral is not just about a moment of mourning, but also a political statement. Al Jazeera, Tehran.
Joining us from the Iranian capital is Fuad Izzadi. Fuad, you're a professor at the University of Tehran's Faculty of World Studies. Iran is signaling that no tanker is going to go through the Strait of Hormuz, not 1 liter of oil, without their say-so. And they are expanding their list of targets to financial and banking institutions in the Gulf. What do you make of Iran's strategy 12 days into the war?
You're correct. After the bombing of the oil depots in Iran a few days ago, the country, I think, has decided to go beyond pure military targets. This is
okay. So people have been paying attention to me throughout this broadcast. Gush is now at 35.43, 35.45. That is longing in the exploration energy companies. UCO is an ETF leverage for crude oil. That's trading at 35.15. That's up. And oil futures now are trading at $88.44.
That the target in these attacks were not military locations. They were residential buildings and areas, food distribution facilities, airport, ports, energy installation, and critical civilian infrastructure. Moreover, we emphasize on the repercussion of disturbing trade and maritime routes on regional and international economy affecting everyone. Yesterday, Bahrain, on behalf of the Gulf Cooperation countries and Jordan, has presented a draft resolution to the Security Council, which was put in blue yesterday around 2 p.m. The Council will take action today on the draft, today 3 p.m. The draft resolution has 3 main components. First, condemnation in the strongest terms of the Iran heinous attacks, which constitute a breach of international law and a serious threat to international peace and security, with the pressure on Iran to halt attacks on innocent civilians and urban targets. Second, demanding the cessation of hostilities by the Iran and the cessation of provocation by Iran, including the use of proxies. Third, deploring Iran's deliberate targeting of innocent civilians and civilians objects, including critical infrastructure, such airports, energy installations, commercial venues, as well attacks and threats to the Strait of Hormuz and the entire global maritime layout. This demand echo the outcome of the GCC ministerial meeting, the most recent extraordinary ministerial meeting at the League of Arab States, and the communique of the GCC EU extraordinary ministerial meeting. We hope that the Security Council speak today in one voice in support of our inherent right to defend ourselves in the face of the unprovoked aggression as enshrined in the UN Charter.
We've been listening to the Bahraini ambassador to the United Nations. This is related to an event that we're following today, will happen over the next few hours, and that is that Gulf countries have introduced a draft resolution at the United Nations Security Council, meaning the council members are going to vote on this resolution. And we just got information on what's in the resolution. It condemns Iran's attacks on neighbors. It demands that Iran ceases hostilities, and it deplores Iran's deliberate targeting of civilian infrastructure, such as airports, the Strait of Hormuz, and other civilian targets. Back to Fuad Azadi. Fuad, thank you for your patience. This is a very simple question. Does Iran care that its neighbors are introducing a resolution at the UN?
I think Iran cares. Iran wants to have good relations with these neighbors. Iran is following UN Charter, Article 51. If a country is attacked, it's called the right for self-defense. Iran is defending itself. U.S. is attacking Iran. Iran has the right to target legitimate U.S.-linked targets. And it's unfortunate that the government of Bahrain has given a huge base to the Americans. They have used these bases to attack Iran, unfortunately. And Iran has no other choice to do that. These governments shoot down some of Iranian missiles, and the debris falls in places that Iran did not intend. So Iran is not targeting the Bahraini government or the Bahraini people. They want to have good relations. These are governments that have access to petrodollars. They have spent billions of dollars in missiles. Iran is already fighting two regimes.
With Canva AI, you'll never design alone again. Just tag in Canva for instant design feedback and suggestions, all from within.
The Islamic Republic of Iran has launched at the territory of the state of Qatar a total of 151 ballistic missiles, of which 140 were intercepted. A total of 9 cruise missiles, of which a number of were intercepted. A total of 111 drones, of which 91 were intercepted.
All right.
No casualties.
I want to switch over to another clip here. What's going on? See, listen to BBC.
Arabia, Brazil, and Azerbaijan, to give you some examples. And also with ministers from major energy importers and trading hubs, such as India and Singapore. We have convened 2 extraordinary meetings of IEA member governments on the situation. And I thank all the IEA members for the strong sense of urgency and solidarity that they have brought to the situation. I was also invited by France's G7 presidency to brief and discuss meetings of G7 finance and also energy ministers this week on the energy market situation. I would like to thank President Emmanuel Macron of France in this regard. Dear colleagues, as a result of the discussions among IEA members, I can now announce that IEA countries have unanimously decided to launch the largest ever release of emergency oil stocks in our agency's history. IEA countries will be making 400 million barrels of oil available. I repeat, 400 million barrels of oil available to the market to offset the supply lost through the effective closure of the Strait. This is a major action aiming to alleviate the immediate impacts of the disruption in markets. But, to be clear, the most important thing for a return to stable flows of oil and gas is the resumption of transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Dear colleagues, in this context, IEA will continue to actively monitor the situation in markets and to make further recommendations to our member countries if needed. As I mentioned in the beginning of my remarks, the IEA was founded over 50 years ago with the core mission of upholding energy security. This is what we are doing today for oil markets and what we have been and will continue to do across the entire energy sector. Thank you.
All right, let's listen into Carlisle's take on oil and gas hoarding.
Peter Piper persistently missed packages, so he scheduled his deliveries with Amazon Business. Peter Piper and positively prospered. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying.
Noise. There's a lot of it these days, especially when it comes to technology. And with so much...
You believe that even if there's a ceasefire, tomorrow, right now, the next 5 minutes, the world's changed. The politics of the crude. What's changed?
For one, you've disrupted global supply chains. This is not just a disruption of it's gas, it's fertilizers, it's metals, it's petrochemicals, the list goes on and on. And then you've disrupted supply chains in countries all over the world. The ships are in the wrong places. The insurances are being canceled. You've taken the pressure out of the fields that you've shut in places like Saudi Arabia or Iraq or even in the UAE. The list goes on and on. The damage is going to take months to unwind. But I want to bring it to the immediate. There is no policy response that can stop this ascent in crude. None. And yes, you hit this 400 million barrel headline. Flow rate is what matters. You know, the maximum sustainable flow rate is 2 million barrels per day. So 400, that'll take them 200 days to get that out. And you put that in the context of a disruption of, let's net it out of this, it's got to be somewhere around 18 million barrels per day right now. You're just a minuscule in terms of offsetting it. So again, there's not many options here.
What would you call this then? A PR campaign?
In terms of doing this, it's all they have. They're going to do whatever they can. But I think the key issue here, keep the hoarding down. Because we know what happened in the 1970s when you got the hoarding. It created an increase of demand of somewhere around 2 million barrels per day. In the size of this market, try 3 million barrels per day, on top of the disruption of somewhere around 18.
That word comes up in your research repeatedly, hoarding.
Yeah.
China has been rewarded for doing just that.
Absolutely.
Over the last 12 months. Do you think others will follow now?
They already are. Whether places like Japan and Korea, they're hoarding anything they can get their hands on at this point. And it even happens down to people driving. Keep your tank filled up. By the way, That's meaningful in terms of demand pulls. Most people drive and they take it down to about a quarter fill and then refill it. Now they're going to be going into the gas station, filling it back up every time it gets to a half or even 3/4.
So what kind of premium you're talking about longer term? We were just speaking with Steve Ott of Federated Hermes earlier, saying that if oil prices go above $90 for a prolonged period of time, that will cause real damage to the underlying economy. Is that a base case for you?
By the way, the one thing, and we're going through a regime change. This is not a trade. This is a regime change. We're moving from that world that was defined from 2014 to 2024, is the new economy boom, driven by Mag 7 is a technology boom, asset light. Similar to what we saw the dot-com boom. What came after the dot-com boom? Remember, it was the exact same thing. You had a geopolitical event, switched you in 2001, and then actually directly connected to the 9/11 was China's admission to WTO. By the way, they were connected. George Bush Jr. needed to use force in the Middle East. He needed a vote in the UN Security Council. He traded admission of China into the WTO to get that vote. Boom, you're off to the races. You were in an asset-heavy boom that lasted for over a decade of 2014. Then we went into the current light asset one. And look, we're again in one of these huge geopolitical events. And I think the big thing to watch is when Xi and President Trump meet at the end of this month, and that's going to be where the negotiation happens.
You could argue that 2020 was the real jumpstart to the reindustrialization of the world, because people realized, oh, wait a second, the physical world actually takes time, unlike sending things digitally. I just wonder how much still needs to be priced in to the physical world. And we've just been shown the risk in the oil markets, but more broadly, how much are we underpricing some of what
I don't think we know what can happen here. And what's going to happen, we're going to reprice everything. It started, and by the way, metals since 2020 are just a straight line going up. Everybody looks at the last couple of months, but it's just, here's a point I like to say is that you looked at the returns of companies in 2000 when we were at $20 oil. They were like 20 or 30%. By the time we were around 2005 or 6, you're at 60, 3 times on the oil price. What do you think the returns were? They were going down because the overall cost structure of the industry was rising. So we ask about how high it can go. Metals are going up, their cost of capital is going up, the currencies weaken, your labor goes up, all of this begins to happen. You reprice. I don't want to speculate. I like to say, get long, buckle your seatbelt, hang on for the ride, and we're going to reprice this thing. Where it reprices, I got in trouble back in the 2000s with, I'm not going to repeat the numbers again, but I think the key point here, what do you want to own? Own the hard assets, own the halos, own anything that, and I love that term. The term we called it in the 2000s was the revenge of the old economy, because it was coming off the back of the dot-com boom. This time around, I love that term, halo. Heavy asset, low obsolescence. Own those assets and hang on. And I want to own metal, I want to own gold, I want to own oil. And by the way, again, this is a huge disruption. It's just not isolated to oil.
What do you make, though, about central banks right now, some of the dwindling reserves and some of their appetite to buy gold?
I think what you're going to see is even more demand for gold out of this, because ultimately you're really going to be question how is the financial situation in the U.S. I'm going to go talk about what is really different about this time versus any other time in the last 50 years in oil. Anytime the oil price would spike, pre-22, before the U.S. and Europe froze central bank assets on Russia, anytime oil prices would spike, you would have capital rotate into the U.S., the recycling, that was the petrodollars. That would act like QE buffer, it's called a shock absorber to the rest of the economy. That goes into gold now. So ever since 2022, commodity prices spike, these emerging markets get money. What do they buy? They buy gold. They buy anything but dollar-denominated assets because they don't want to get sanctions imposed on them like what happened to the Russians. And as a result, you don't have that money coming back. One other point you got to keep in mind is now transfer payments are bigger. The U.S. debt is bigger. The interest payments are bigger. So when oil prices go up, headline inflation goes up, that gets much bigger. In fact, we estimate if you go to 120 and stay there, you're going to crowd out $150 billion of private credit because you're going to have to basically issue that in public credit.
Jeff, do you think the world is more vulnerable now than we were in 1973? But the U.S. right now is a net exporter.
Oh, it's a net exporter at the income cash flow level, meaning they produce as much as they consume, roughly. And I think you get an excess of around $80 billion on a $30 trillion economy. But let's say, put it this way, I call it the paradox of energy dominance. Let's go to the wealth level. Let's look at the equity market. Energy, 3% of the market. 3. How big are the things that are short? 53%. So you're long 3, it's short 53 at the wealth level. And what is the multiple on that 3? It's like 12 or 13. What is the multiple on the other one? 36. You're in trouble at the wealth level. You may be safe at the income level, but you're in real trouble at the wealth level. Then you get at the credit level. Now you got that. Now you're taking your shock absorber because of the sanctions you imposed on Russia's central bank and turned it into a shock amplifier. So again, I agree with you 100%. Energy dominance at the cash flow level, but not at the wealth level and not at the credit level.
Jeff, final question. So Aisha, refiners there have clearly got a bit of a cushion. Can you tell us how big that cushion is and how quickly before we start to see headlines across the Bloomberg on shortages?
Oh, you already are. Jet fuel in Singapore spiked to over $230 a barrel. You're at that point, and that's the 40 is only amplifying it. And you just took out a 900,000 barrel per day refinery that was bombed in the Gulf. So the situation on refined products is, and I think the key point here is it's Asia is going to be the one that's going to be in the deepest problem. Going to be where the negotiation happens.
You could argue that
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. When you do this regularly, you're slowing down the aging process, you're helping with brain function, helping with your cardiovascular health, and also your immune system. This is really important to take every day. Now, this is a month's supply. You can mix it with soft foods, filtered water, smoothie, or even with milk, but take it every day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, I also have Gladiator barley, which is very similar to heirloom barley, but there's one added benefit, and that is it'll help to build muscle. So do some resistance training, take the Gladiator barley. This will help to build the muscle, but it'll also bring down that inflammation. You'll recover quicker, soak up free radicals, and also detoxify your body. So you're helping with your endocrine system, your immune system, your brain function, and your musculature. Now you can take it separately, but you can take it also with Myotrol, or you can take the Myotrol separately. But Myotrol helps with the gene expression to maintain and build muscle. This is really important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Take it every day. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscles and maintain muscles. Now, Myotrol will also help the health of your mitochondria, so you'll have more energy to maintain that muscle. And if you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from taking Myotrol. You should take it every day while you're doing your strength training, and you'll gain strength for your sport. Now, the best combo here is to take the Gladiator barley with the Myotrol to help build muscle and maintain muscle. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You'll also notice that by taking Gladiator barley, you will be recovering from your workout quicker because of bringing down that inflammation. Because when you work out, you're bringing up inflammation in your joints and in your muscles, but also generating more free radicals. So you want to soak up those free radicals with the superoxide dismutase that's in here. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Still standing. Lina Sinjab in Beirut, thank you so much. Well, we're joined by Brighteon Channel, who is from the BBC Persian service, which is used by 24 million people around the world, but predominantly in Iran. We're hearing that Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has been re-beginning its wave of strikes across other nations. Just bring us up to date where we are with this.
So yes, they have started actually a couple of hours ago. They released a statement saying that they have started actually 38 wave of attacks on Israel and also neighboring countries, where they claim that these are American targets because these are facilities used by the American forces. But in Iran, we have had more reports of attacks on Tehran and also on the city of Marivan in western Iran. And a hospital has closed in the southern city of Bushehr on the Persian Gulf. Bushehr is the same city that hosts Iran's only nuclear power plant, and also Rosatom, which is the Russian company that is involved in nuclear power generation, has said that it has taken out 150 members of staff from the Bushehr power plant and taken them out to Russia. So that is what is happening in terms of war. And from what we are hearing from people in Iran is that since yesterday, when the chief of Iranian police kind of threatened everyone that if they share any pictures or videos with the likes of BBC Persian or even post them on social media, they will be targeted and prosecuted and punished. We are hearing messages from people who are very reluctant in terms of sharing pictures and videos. So our work in terms of finding out exactly what is going on and verifying that has become even more difficult. And also people are talking about, many cities having some sort of a military atmosphere. There are many checkpoints, guarded by Basij militia, which makes it very difficult to kind of live in the city. Or
I want to listen to Ian.
Since the beginning of this war, Donald Trump has sent conflicting messages about what the U.S. aims to achieve and how long the fighting could go on. After a few days, Trump was already boasting the U.S. was ahead of schedule in achieving its military aims, suggesting the war would be wrapped up within 4 to 5 weeks. He has also been saying the U.S. could expand its operations, though he's insistent that will not lead to another lengthy conflict in the Middle East.
We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion. How good is our military, right? Amazing. How good? Short-term. Short-term.
For more on this, let's bring in Ian Bremmer. He's a political scientist and founder and president of the political risk consultancy Eurasia Group. Welcome, Ian. Tell us, how do you interpret the latest mixed messages from U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration? On the one hand, Trump suggests that the war is almost over, and he also says that the U.S. is going to go further. What do you make of that?
He's looking for an off-ramp, and it's challenging. He's put himself in a bit of a box, both in terms of Israel, which is very interested in this war going a lot farther than I think the Americans have appetite for. Also, in terms of creating stability in the Gulf, which is a lot harder than Trump would like it to be. And of course, there are market implications and energy implications for that. And then finally, getting to yes with whatever the Iranian regime is going to be. And that's a very different place from what Trump was saying just a few days ago, from the demands that he had coming from Iran.
Trump insists that the U.S. military campaign in Iran has been a tremendous success. How do you see it?
Well, I see that whatever Trump does, he's going to paint it that way. I'm not surprised. No one should be surprised. There have been successful aspects of the strikes. The Iranian Navy is basically destroyed. Their ballistic missile capabilities are mostly destroyed. And if you want to decapitate the leadership, you have decapitated a fair amount of the leadership. That all matters. But they still have nuclear capabilities and stockpiles of enriched uranium. They've got a lot of drones, and they have the capacity to make a lot more drones, and they're very cheap. And they can be ramped up quickly, as we've seen from the Ukrainians, even under wartime conditions, some 4 million a year that they're producing. So Iran can do that. And then further, Trump has said that he was going to rescue the Iranian people. Right now, if the war were over tomorrow, the Iranian people are in worse condition than if Trump had never launched a war. So that ain't happening. And he said that he has to have a say over the next leader of Iran. Well, that doesn't appear to be happening either. So for Trump to say he's winning or to announce that he's won really requires changing his own goals for the war, which he's very capable of doing, but it's not clear that everyone's going to allow him to get away with that.
Is it clear to you what objectives the Trump administration has in this war?
Sure. Well, originally, sure. They wanted Venezuela redux. I mean, they sat down in negotiations with the Iranians, and they had lots of demands that the Iranian government was unprepared to accept. So this was a combination of last year's 12-day war, which is take out a number of the military capabilities that the Iranians refused to negotiate away, and at the same time remove significant parts of the leadership that you find intransigent. And then once you've done both of those, you're in a better negotiating position with leaders that come in that, of course, are willing to negotiate with you because they've just seen what you're capable of doing. In other words, bigger than Venezuela, but the same basic playbook. And by the way, Trump has been wildly successful with that playbook in Venezuela. There's only one problem, and that's that it turns out that Iran is not Venezuela.
From the beginning of this war, people have been looking to figure out what Trump's objectives are and whether there's any consistency there. It does not appear to be a lot of consistency. If we don't know what the real mission is in Iran, how will we know when it's been accomplished, and how will Trump know and Netanyahu know that it's time to end the war?
Well, I just told you what.
Something's different. I'm changing. I don't know if I like who I'm becoming.
Well, I just told you what the mission was. The problem is that that mission has failed, and they don't have a backup plan. So now Trump is flailing around for a backup plan. Netanyahu knows what the mission is. It's destroy this regime, destroy their capabilities to project power around the region, both directly and through proxies. He's been doing a lot of that over the last couple of years, by the way. Now, for Netanyahu, if that means a civil war, not such a big problem. For Netanyahu, if that means lots and lots of Iranians get killed, his population generally supports that. As long as the regime goes away, they're very supportive of the war. The problem is the United States is not. The American population opposes this war, opposes the high oil prices, opposes the 7 American servicemen and women that have already come back dead, and they're having a hard time figuring out why Trump needed to do this. Because the entire war is on Trump, right? I mean, this is not one you get to blame Biden on. You don't get to blame the Israelis. You don't get to blame the Europeans or the Gulf states. Trump chose to do this. He chose to do it by himself, without his allies, without the Europeans, without the Gulf states, only with Israel. He chose to do it at the time that he did, and he chose to do it much, much larger than what was necessary to just take out the military and nuclear capabilities. So to the extent that all of that is now failing, Trump owns it. And by the way, Secretary Hegseth said that just this morning. He gave a press conference. People were saying, well, you know, when is this war over? He said, hey, this is all Trump. Like, he's the decider. He's the one that will decide. He has this hand on the throttle. He'll decide, just as he decided the mission, he'll decide when it's over. So it is completely Trump's war. And to the extent that this war is going badly and has an initial mission that can't actually be fulfilled, that's for a guy who's, you know, trying to get midterm elections going his way. This is really a bad decision, right? This is, I consider this the worst foreign policy decision Trump has made in either of his 2 administrations, and that's quite significant.
Looking at leadership, on the other side now, we're looking at a new supreme leader in Iran, Mojtaba Khamenei. The son of Ali Khamenei is now the new supreme leader in Iran. As you mentioned, Donald Trump wanted to have a role in choosing the next leader. He obviously didn't get that. So my question to you is does the new leader have a target on his back, and what sort of changes should we expect from Iran under this new leadership, if any?
He does have a target on his back. I expect that that target is more of an Israeli target than an American target. I think Trump is clear that he would be willing to work with this guy even now, though he didn't say that a few days ago, if the war came to a close and they could find a way to reopen the straits, stop the drones from being hit. For this point, Trump would be okay with it. I mean, there are problems there. Again, this is a regime that is still very capable and willing to brutalize their own population. They killed an estimated 30,000 in the matter of just a few days. And I've heard that not just from American sources, I've heard that from European sources over the past weeks, back in January. And you know, that capacity and willingness to repress their own people is not diminished today. I mean, a lot of the reason why you see the Iranians continuing to pop off drones and missiles across the region is to show their own population, we are still in charge. Don't think about coming after us. So that's a big problem. And also, you know, the Americans have a big problem in dealing with this guy, even beyond how much brutality the Iranian people will experience. As of right now, the United States, as Europe, want lower oil prices. That means you still need the oil to come out of the Persian Gulf, including from Iran. And Trump has thought about taking Karg Island, where all of that oil from Iran is exported. So far, they've chosen not to do it because they worry that it could be a disaster. Lots of casualties, and maybe the Iranians blow it up. The Iranians also have all of this enriched uranium stockpiles. The Americans have thought about sending in commandos to take it out, maybe to remove it from Esfahan. They've chosen so far not to do it because it's extremely dangerous. It's hard to destroy. American troops would be at a lot of risk if they do that. So far, Trump hasn't made that order. But if he ends up with the regime that he hates, with money coming from oil that he can't stop, to pay for a nuclear program that they will be dead set on getting, because the one way you avoid getting decapitated is if you've got nukes, right? We've learned that is a problematic set of facts for this American president.
Let's talk about the broader implications of this war, Ian. You've already mentioned oil. Iran has effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting oil and gas shipments from the Gulf. What would be the impact if it stays shut for many weeks or even months?
Well, it's hard to imagine oil going much more than 120 for a sustained period of time, because at that point you see lots of demand destruction, that you change consumer behavior, change industrial behavior of the people that are buying the oil. So oil prices are at 120, but the total volume is down, the total demand is down, the amount of money that's going through the economy is down. That's obviously really problematic. I've got to tell you, I'm not surprised oil prices came down on the back of Trump's statements, because they are indeed de-escalatory. But right now, the Trump plan for getting oil through, which involves providing insurance as well as providing military escort, which is being ramped up, the shippers are not okay with that. They say this is still too dangerous. As long as Iran has the ability to shoot drones, we don't think it is okay, even with escorts, to send these ships, that we are risking our crews. It's unacceptable. So at this point, it does not seem to me that the straits are going to be reopened soon. And if that's the case, the markets are seeing something I don't understand in terms of the level of complacency around oil price right now.
Of course, the markets in Asia are have been hit harder, particularly in South Korea. We're seeing like 8% drops there, but we'll see where that goes from day to day. This conflict, though, it's engulfed the whole region, and the impact is being felt around the world. Looking at this bigger picture, what are some of the more far-reaching implications of this war that maybe aren't getting talked about as much as they should? Because you're really good at connecting the dots of things happening in the world. Help us out here understand what it could mean in the in more far-reaching terms?
Well, I mean, the most obvious one is that the Russians are beneficiaries. The oil price is up. The Indians have had their sanctions suspended so they can buy more Russian crude. A lot of the weapons that were going into the Ukrainian fight that the Americans were selling to the Europeans are now going to be needed for Iran and the Gulf, all of which makes life easier for Putin and more challenging for Zelensky in that ongoing fight. Very important to your viewers. Beyond that, the Gulf states are very angry. They're particularly angry at Israel, but they're angry at the Americans too for why it is that they were put in this position, why it is that they're vulnerable. Long-term, the potential that the Abraham Accords will be under strain, and that the willingness of some of these governments to maintain stable relations, functional diplomatic relations, economic relations, technology relations with the Israelis, given everything going on, that's a concern. And then, of course, you have the fact that anti-Semitism has already been way up in terms of attacks around the world. Terrorism, radical Islamic terrorism, something we haven't spoken as much about, but the Iranians have been one of the leading exporters. And, you know, with this decapitation strike, that, of course, is something that you would expect a much greater worry, not just in the region, but more broadly. And that's something, I mean, it's hard to imagine that, you know, a country of 93 million people, you take out their leaders and it's fine. And then Trump announces the war is over and the war is actually over. That is hard to imagine. A country that already was teetering on lack of any economic capacity to take care of its people, with a massive water crisis, with electricity crisis, with extremely poor infrastructure. Now that's all getting blown up. You know, what's the possibility that Iran as a country starts to fall apart? And there are massive refugee flows as a consequence of that, humanitarian crises, weapons flows that suddenly are all over the place, to, you know, because people sell whatever it is they have. Those are longer term concerns that I think are going to be clear consequences of this war for, again, well beyond when the fighting in Iran stops.
And finally, you've called this conflict a war of choice, suggesting that it wasn't really necessary. What kind of message does that send to the rest of the world? Could it serve as a precedent for other countries looking to eliminate a perceived threat from a rival or conquer new territory?
Well, the Russians don't need much of a signal to try to do that. They're just incapable. The Chinese definitely would feel more justified, say, in Taiwan, but I don't think they need more of a justification. They just don't have that military capacity today, and they also don't have the military leadership, plus they're very risk averse. But certainly Venezuela sent that message to lots of folks. The big message is that the most powerful country in the world, the most powerful military in the world, is acting unilaterally. And they're doing so not only without concern for international law, and it wouldn't be the first time that happened, but also without coordination with any of their core allies. And that's something that certainly unnerves the Europeans, the Canadians, the Japanese, the South Koreans, Australians, countries all over the world. This had been the most powerful alliance, NATO and the US-led group of military alliances more broadly. And those alliances, frankly, are facing very significant disruption from this US policy set.
Ian, thank you very much for your insights. That was Ian Bremmer from the Eurasia Group.
All right, we're going to compare it with what Victor has to say. Now, Ian, from my take, was a little bit judgmental, a little bit harsh, a little bit too critical on Trump's policy. But he's a never-Trumper, right? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. This will target multiple systems. This will help with brain function. It'll help with cardiovascular health, rev up your metabolism, slow down the aging process, increase your energy levels. Now, take a scoop of this each day, mix it with soft foods like hummus, yogurt, applesauce. This will also help control your A1C levels. In addition, by doing some calorie restriction in taking this, because you'll have a steady burn of energy throughout the day, you can lose weight if you want to lose weight. This will also help with musculature. So many benefits from taking this. You will notice the benefits of this within 72 hours when you start taking this. You'll have a steady burn of energy. You'll be sleeping better. You'll be getting rid of brain fog. You'll be able to think faster, have better memory. And overall, when you're taking this every day, you'll start noticing that your body is aging slower. You'll have more longevity. And this stacks really well with C60. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. All right, let's listen to Victor Davis Hansen. I haven't seen this video, but I suspect that he'll be a little bit more aligned with Trump compared to Ian.
Know what the ultimate aim was the purpose in World War II to just fight them to a standstill? Was it to destroy the Nazi government? Was it to reclaim all of Western Europe and then make sure that they were democratic governments? That happens in war. A lot of things are articulated as you go on. There's been a lot of criticism of the Trump administration over what will be the end game in Iran. Some are impalpable. One is impalpable. One is favorable. Hello, this is Victor Davis Hansen for the Daily Signal. There's been a lot of criticism of the Trump administration over what will be the end game in Iran, and I'll get that in a second, but they've also said, what is your agenda? And they criticize Trump, for example, citing that he wants to demilitarize Iran so it doesn't have ballistic missiles or drones and the capability to attack its neighbors, or that it wanted to ensure that it did not have a nuclear weapon, which the Iranians themselves brag that they have the ability to make 11 right now, should they wish, or had we not bombed. There's also an agenda, his critics say, well, he wants to overthrow the government or at least help the protesters. Well, he wants to do all three. They're not mutually incompatible. When we went to World War II, we really didn't know what the ultimate aim was. Joseph Stalin was our nominal ally, and he was shocked when Roosevelt and Churchill kind of on the fly in 1940 at the Casablanca conference said, actually, our aim is unconditional surrender. Nobody thought it was at the time. Was the purpose in World War II to just fight them to a standstill? That's what Russia originally thought. Was it to destroy the Nazi government? Was it to reclaim all of Western Europe and then make sure that they were democratic governments? Is that what we said? Or we didn't say we were going to do that in the Eastern Europe. We thought we were, but there were a lot of aims in World War II, both in the Pacific and the European. That happens in war. A lot of things are articulated as you go on. As far as the outcome, I think there's three possible outcomes, and there is sort of a deadline that is self-imposed. We're only 8 months from the November midterms, and it will be adjudicated on the economy, and Trump is not talking about the economy because he has his hands full with Venezuela and the Iran war. People have talked about Cuba. At some point, very quickly, he's going to have to pivot and start talking about the economy and the good things that he will argue that he has done. And he has to get the tensions lowered so that oil tankers and commerce can go freely out of the Straits of Hormuz and gas prices will go back. Kind of ironic for Democrats that gas prices have rise when they were 30 or 40 cents lower than the average under Joe Biden. So they have risen temporarily due to speculation because, after all, we're the largest oil producer in the world and self-sufficient in oil. It's speculation about what might happen next that's raising oil prices. So there is a pressure on this administration to get the job done. I mean, there's going to be three possible outcomes. I mean, we haven't articulated which it is. Some are impalpable. One is impalpable. One is favorable. The first is that we put so much pressure on the Iranian theocracy that would be defined by destroying its infrastructure, its meetings, its leadership, its military, its weaponry. The Revolutionary Guards are scattered and attrited. tried it. And at some point, there is going to be either a call for them to say, no more, no mas. We're losing our entire country's military infrastructure. We have no Air Force now. We have no Navy now. We have very few missiles. We give up. We can't take it anymore. Okay. And that would be followed then by a popular uprising. And that would mean that demonstrators, then the theocracy would say, we can't do it anymore. People who had demonstrated, 30-something thousand had been killed in the last, they would pour back out on the streets. There would be an interim coalition government, dissidents in Europe or the Shah's son. Some people would come over and they would have explicit instructions to form a coalition transitory government, leading the way to a consensual government with elections supervised by outside powers, the EU, NATO, who knows. And eventually, within a few months, there would be an elected government with the warning that they will not allow the theocrats to come back and participate, just as Germany didn't allow the Nazis to participate in the government, and they would be under strict instructions that they can't get a bomb and they have to dismantle their missiles if there's any left for a particular period of time while they're inspected. That would be the optimum choice. In other words, regime change, demilitarization, constitutional government. Iran goes from being the problem in the entire Middle East in its efforts to make a Shia revolution and overthrow the Gulf states, destroy Israel, etc. No, and now it is a force for good and a force multiplier of the Abrams Accord, etc. The second possible solution, I would call it the Venezuelan solution, with the caveat, we don't know how Venezuela is going to work. But in this scenario, we get somebody who is a dissident or had ties with a former government, but is secular, such as a military general, one of the lower generals, 1 or 2 star, that haven't been formidable figures in the top hierarchy of the theocracy. And they come and say the malacracy is dead. And most of the generals are dead. And I represent dissident generals that want to stop this war. And we promise you that we will agree to the negotiation demands before the war to stop the ballistic missiles, stop the huge subsidies to the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. We will stop all nuclear proliferation. We'll allow you to come in, and we will exercise power with the proviso, if the people want us to have a transition, we're willing to talk about that. That's not so good because you're not getting the dissidents and the people immediately in the process. But on the other hand, you have somebody who has power in the government and supposedly would be backed by what's left of the army to get rid of theocracy and could serve as a useful kind of Venezuelan partial transition, as we saw earlier in the year. And finally, the worst scenario, but it might happen, I would call it stewing in their own juice. At some point, a month, 6 weeks, we've done about all we can. In other words, we've destroyed the military ability and every aspect of Iran to hurt its neighbors, at least for the foreseeable future. We may even have found their nuclear material. We wiped out their leadership, but there's still people fighting, and we don't want to go there in the ground. And so we just say, well, see, you wouldn't want to be. We've done what we can. It'll take anybody takes power 5 to 10 years. We hope that you people who were so brave to go out on the street will now, after we've stopped bombing, it's in your hands. We're not going to tell you to have a consensual government. We're not going to try to keep wiping out your enemies. We're done. We did this for a month or 6 weeks, and it's up to you now to take the reins and create your own type of government according to your own wishes, with a caveat: if you let the malacracy come back, we will be back. But for now on, we're not going to put ground food. We're done. And that would be the third. Obviously, the best thing in the world would be to have the Ayatollahs completely out of the picture, completely impotent, the army disbanded, or at least not in service to the theocracy, a transitional figure coming in who would agree to a constitutional government with elections, and dissidents would flock back, and That would be a wonderful thing to see a consensual government around. The second best would be a Venezuelan solution. A strong man keeps order, but does not allow nuclear proliferation or aggression against its neighbors for the time being. The third was, we've done enough. We've defanged the tiger, and we don't really know what's going to happen, but from time to time we'll check in. But in the meantime, we hope you distance. We hope you could do something, but it's not our job, not our responsibility. With that, I'll leave you. This is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal. Thank you for tuning in to the Daily Signal. Please.
I think Victor Hanson's assessment was better than Ian's. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant that will soak up free radicals and slow down the aging process. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and in MCT coconut oil. C60 needs to be suspended in an oil for proper absorption. Take it, preferably on an empty stomach. Take a teaspoon a day every day. Every day. And what this will do is soak up free radicals, and it's going to help many different organ systems. It'll help with your brain, cardiovascular system, help with your immune system and your endocrine system. By soaking up those free radicals at the cellular level and at the tissue level, you're going to reduce inflammation and reduce stress. The mitochondria in cells will improve. The health of that mitochondria will improve, and the ATP creation will improve, so you have more energy. By soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. And by soaking up free radicals and reducing inflammation and stress at the neuron level, you're keeping your neurons healthy. So please go to my store, take a teaspoon a day every day to slow down the aging process. C60 also works at the basal layer to improve your skin. You take this every day for a year, and you're going to visibly look younger. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Please click the link, get the great supplements that I offer. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You save $5. I want you to save some money, but get these products, take them every day, and slow down the aging process. It's a great way to get healthy. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it. That's the end of the broadcast for today, and I will see you soon.